What if a normal world transformed into another world? That would be the origin of countless portals appearing, creating opportunities for monsters to attack. Along with that strangeness, some people gained extraordinary powers and abilities, appearing in time and responding to the cruel monsters. They are called hunters. Among them, Hunter Guok Pilsong was known as the best hunter, even in his 60s. However, he suddenly vanished, disappearing without a trace in the other world, along with many rumors about Guok Pilsong. 10 years later, a strange old man claiming to be that famous hunter appeared, but even the doctors were helpless with the old man, considering it a lie. The doctor even said that it was absurd for such a great person to be stuck in a nursing home. No matter what he said, they all showed contempt. Another old man suddenly ran over, panting heavily. When the doctors went to check on him, a large cockroach suddenly appeared from behind. It grabbed the old man's neck, and he panicked and cried for help. The monster didn't hesitate and took his head right off before their stunned eyes. Then it moved closer to another prey. Unexpectedly, from above, someone wielding a knife jumped down and attacked the monster. It was none other than the old man who had claimed to be Guok Pilsong earlier. He stabbed straight into the monster, right before the astonished eyes of the young man. He even said that there were many more, reminding him to get up quickly if he didn't want to die. Looking at his resolute appearance, the young man gradually began to think that he really was Hunter Guok Pilsong. Portals opened, and more monsters appeared. The old man didn't hesitate and rushed straight to attack the monsters with just a knife in himself. Then he unleashed techniques, finishing off all the bugs. Because of his old age, he felt tired, wishing he could return to his glorious days of 10 years ago. Gasping for breath, another large praying mantis came to attack him. It turned out to be the leader, and the monster immediately used its claws to slash at him. He was immediately knocked back by its power and slammed into a nearby rock. The monster approached, intending to devour him. With no other choice, he had to stab the knife between its eyes, but it didn't work. Waiting to regain his strength, he unleashed a technique and finished it off. The monster, hit by his attack, immediately fell over, truly worthy of the name of legendary hunter Guok Pilsong. But then, because he had used up all his strength, he also collapsed from exhaustion. Thinking that he would never go further, suddenly a system window appeared and announced that the target had received the blessing of immortality. Hearing this, he couldn't believe his eyes. He was about to achieve eternal life. Afterwards, he woke up in a hospital. When the nurse explained the situation and asked about his identity, he suddenly answered that he was 83 years old. This really shocked the nurse, and he also didn't realize that because of that reward, he had been rejuvenated into a teenager in his teens. Pilsong was annoyed because the nurse didn't believe his words about being 83 years old. He even smugly said that he was 10 years younger than the nurse. But he suddenly realized something when he looked at himself in the mirror. He really had become younger than before. The system message and the blessing from yesterday were really not an illusion. Not believing it was real, Pilsong left the hospital bed, ignoring the nurse searching for him. Pilsong went to the association. Then he was forced to use some kind of weird scanner to get his work done. It was now 10 years earlier, and not keeping up with the times made Pilsong not know how to use the machine. Everyone was in a hurry, and waiting for a tech-illiterate person like him was taking forever. A large young man lost patience and started a fight. Unexpectedly, a rank S hunter Park Shochan stepped forward to stop him. Park Shochan's presence shocked everyone around. He was being smug when Pilsong suddenly said he looked like Park Dobbin, extinguishing his smugness. But what Pilsong didn't expect was that Park Shochan had abandoned that foolish name Dobbin long ago. So how did this kid know about it? He was angry and decided to interrogate and deal with Pilsong with his fists. But when the young man repeated Shochan's previous words, it made him stop. He then arranged to talk to him elsewhere. When they arrived, he still questioned the young man's name. He replied that his name was Guok Pilsong, but Shochan didn't believe it at all, probably thinking he was old and hot-tempered. Shochan decided to deal with him with one blow. Pilsong quickly and deftly dodged it. Unable to be serious anymore, Shochan transformed into a rank S beast form. Then he blew the young man away in an instant. But what surprised Shochan was that the rank S attack had no effect on Pilsong. Unable to persuade this old man, Pilsong showed his skills, dashing quickly towards him and throwing a punch. Shochan was shocked. He was hit and sent flying far away. Pilsong was even worried that his punch might have been a bit too strong. Going back to the past a little, Dobbin in his youth originally thought that hunters with destructive and barbaric power would not suit the beauty he sought. But that became wrong until he met the legend Pilsong, whose pure beauty was more beautiful than anything else. Returning to the story, Shochan woke up after Pilsong's knockout. The young man's voice reminded him of Pilsong from 10 years ago, but it turned out to be a young teenager. After he explained about the blessing and the special reward, Shochan finally believed he was the legendary Pilsong. Unfortunately, Shokchen also couldn't find a way to reverse it. Then he became curious as to why Pilzong didn't return to his fame as a renowned hunter. Before he could finish speaking, Pilzong interrupted him. He explained that the people who had saved him, Taeyang, Bayamzik, June, all three had fallen in battle so that he could survive countless dungeons. Hearing this, Shokchen also offered to protect him, but what he didn't know was that doing so would make Pilzong's existence too important to everyone. Whether it was right for him to survive by trading the lives of young people like that, returning to be a hunter to live such a glorious life only made Pilzong even more uneasy. Seeing his feelings, Shokchen decided to keep his identity a secret. Currently, Pilzong didn't know what to do, so Shokchen took the opportunity to ask him to help him with something. That was to participate in a rank D dungeon raid and investigate some matters. Because of his concern, Pilzong agreed and was issued a green rank D bracelet. While wondering what the situation was that required his help, two punks who liked to cause trouble appeared from behind him, intentionally bumping into Pilzong, not apologizing, and even bragging that they were rank C, belittling a rank D like him as useless. The thug seemed to be the boss of the Scorpion Gang, and his subordinates kept looking down on him, making Pilzong angry. Suddenly, an old man appeared from behind him and patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. He introduced himself as Kim Kielman. When asked about his age, Pilzong replied that he was 80 years old, shocking him. At his age, he must have had 8 children already. Two girls who appeared out of nowhere saw Pilzong and came over to chat, even praising him as too kawaii. The two girls introduced themselves. One was Park Ji-yeon, 24 years old, and the other was Lee Yoon-ji. Ji-yeon approached and greeted him by kissing Pilzong on the cheek, making him blush deeply, and Kielman standing next to him kept praising him. The commander Taijin stepped forward, a rank C hunter and the coordinator for today's raid. When Taijin asked about the legendary hunter Guok Pilzong and what relationship Pilzong had with him, because he didn't want to reveal his identity, he vaguely answered that he was his brother-in-law's friend. The hunters who had just ranked up to D, including the Scorpion Gang and the young men from earlier, gathered together to prepare to enter the raid portal. The boss of the Scorpion Gang continued to look down on them, thinking that a rank D portal was too trivial. Pilzong retorted, and the two continued to argue. Taijin stepped forward to maintain order, opened the rank D portal, and told everyone to enter. Everyone stepped through the rank D portal. The sun was scorching hot, almost burning their skin. Commander Taijin ordered that they would start when everyone was inside. But the Scorpion Gang wanted to ditch out just to drink something cold and eat pork belly. Pilzong was hopeless. They were truly lazy beyond redemption. Going back to the past a little, Dobbin was panting heavily because the portal was small but difficult to enter. Pilzong in his 60s back then reminded him to practice caution before entering the dungeon and to follow his instructions. Pilzong pondered, in reality, in the past, the level of the dungeon was often assessed based on the size of the portal, so everyone was tense until they conquered it. But now, everyone can know the level before raiding, so almost no one worries about it anymore. Pilzong was curious, and he approached and asked Commander Taijin if this rank D dungeon was difficult. Taijin replied that a rank D dungeon would be suitable for a rank D hunter, and if there was anything dangerous, a rank C hunter like Taijin would intervene. Pilzong suddenly asked what if the dungeon was more difficult than expected, a question that was also beyond the commander's expectations. The Scorpion Gang from afar heard this and told Pilzong to go home if he was scared. Seeing Pilzong was a bit worried, Taijin quickly reassured him that such a thing would not happen. This had been verified by the dungeon difficulty measuring device, and raid instructions were given based on that. This machine had already been commercialized for 5 years. The boss of the Scorpion Gang continued to look down on him, thinking that a newbie like Pilzong was just a nuisance. Pilzong was not one to back down and argued back. The two were in a heated argument when suddenly a monster appeared from above a rock. This monster was very large and ferocious. Everyone around didn't know what to do, but Pilzong quickly decapitated it with just his chipped knife. Everyone was shocked. A newbie like Pilzong had solved the monster so quickly, unbelievably so. This extraordinary feat infuriated the boss of the Scorpion Gang. Commander Taijin felt uneasy, because rank D monsters were only the size of a large dog or a large bug, but this one was bigger than everything. Could it be a rank C monster? In a cave, a girl and a young man were trapped there. The two discussed asking adults for help because they didn't dare to go out to the dangerous place. But seconds later, a monster similar to the one just now crawled in and attacked, making them panic and not know how to deal with it. Pilzong's team continued on their dungeon raid. Commander Taijin was still worried about the monster from before. That monster was nothing like rank D. Taijin even suspected it was a rank C monster. Taijin also glanced back at Pilzong, not understanding how a newbie like him could defeat it. Taijin worried that the dungeon index measuring device was faulty, and that this dungeon was above rank D, but then he dismissed the thought, thinking it was just his imagination. While raiding for a while, the Scorpion Gang boss yelled because of the heat. Everyone was exhausted, forcing Taijin to let everyone rest. Pilsong thought with annoyance that these young people complained more than they walked. Suddenly, the monster from before reappeared in front of them. Seeing its repeated appearances, plus the slightly gloomy atmosphere this time, Commander Taijin fearfully said it was the boss, and everyone should join forces to fight. The Scorpion Gang boss turned to look at Pilsong. Feeling humiliated by him earlier, he grabbed his axe and ran to attack, determined to take revenge on Pilsong. Seeing him approach, the monster recognized him and shrank back to defend. So, his attack was ineffective. Pilsong looked at his handling of it and was disgusted, attacking while the monster was defending. These guys' thinking was all wrong. The monster lunged forward to attack. While he was struggling, not knowing what to do, Commander Taijin Kip Toy pulled him out of the way. Then Taijin drew his sword, telling everyone to step back. He thought that in the current group, only he, a rank C, could handle it. Taijin jumped up, swinging an attack at the monster. But that couldn't harm the monster at all. While he was hesitating, Pilsong suddenly shouted loudly, telling him to aim for the head. Holding the sword in fear, but finally Taijin realized. He regained his courage, jumped up again, swinging a powerful sword strike at the monster's head. Immediately, its head flew off. Everyone around cheered. Pilsong then approached to check on him. Taijin saw him and thanked him profusely. Everyone thought the dungeon had been conquered, but strangely, no notification or message appeared. That meant it wasn't the boss. Taijin felt uneasy. Suddenly, from above the cliff, more monsters of the same level appeared. Taijin couldn't believe his eyes, a rank D dungeon with so many powerful monsters appearing. Seeing this, Pilsong said that he still had the mindset that this was a rank D dungeon, according to the state's level measuring device. They were getting closer and closer, not knowing how they would face them. The monsters were gradually rushing to attack. Someone even announced that monsters were still right behind them. Taijin felt uneasy. This dungeon was originally rank C, or even higher. Thinking this, he had no choice but to tell everyone to retreat and ask for support, because many lives depended on his decision. Looking at how Taijin acted, Pilsong felt that he was a truly talented commander. Back to the story, everyone was moving to another place when the Scorpion Gang boss started insulting them for no reason. He said that a rank C hunter like Taijin was afraid and running away from a rank D dungeon. Taijin explained that it was originally a rank C dungeon and could even be higher. This made the boss suspicious about the association's dungeon announcements, but currently Taijin didn't have a satisfactory answer. Suddenly, a loud noise came from inside another cave. Everyone turned back in fear, thinking there was another new monster inside. Unexpectedly, a girl staggered out, pleading for help. Park Ji-yeon stepped forward to support the girl. At this time, she said that her friend was in danger inside the dungeon because of a sudden monster attack. Taijin was worried when he heard this. Why was a child like her in this dungeon? Then he questioned her, and the girl told the whole story. It was a high-paying part-time job in the dungeon, which could be concealed. The boss hadn't finished listening when he jumped up and said this girl was one of the tomb raiders in the rumors. Pilsong was confused, and Taijin explained that they were people who hid after the dungeon raid and aimed for the reward of completing it. It turned out that many young people nowadays risk their lives just to enter a dangerous dungeon. The Scorpion Gang boss also said that this girl had destabilized the dungeon. But that wasn't the right conclusion. Taijin ordered everyone to save these children. Safely escape the dungeon. Hearing this, the boss roared loudly. No one would risk their lives to save those kids. Taijin was also struggling intensely internally. In the face of a precarious situation, Pilsong volunteered to go save the child himself. Taijin stopped him, but he remained determined and told Taijin to take everyone to safety. Taijin was calculating. Pilsong was originally a newbie, but his skills were better than a rank A hunter. He gritted his teeth and trusted him. Anyway, in this situation, trusting him was the best choice. Then Taijin entrusted everything to him. Pilsong turned to the girl, took her away and went to save her friend. Ji-yeon was still worried whether he could do it, and Taijin didn't know what else to do but hope for this slim chance. In the cave, the girl's injured friend was still sitting there trying to manage. He was angry because he had been tricked, and they had been pushed into a dead end. His sweet words of persuasion along with the extremely lucrative amount of money made the young man blindly believe in it. Suddenly there was the sound of someone entering. Suspecting it was a monster, he grabbed a wooden stick to defend himself. It turned out to be the girl from before, Yoon-soo, running to save him. Pilsong entered, and Yoon-soo introduced him to be the hunter who came to rescue them. Seeing Yoon-soo and her friend, Gil-woo, struggling in the dungeon, Pilsong felt pity and secretly cursed the bastards who had pushed the children to their deaths. When they were about to leave, a monster suddenly rushed in to attack. Gil-woo's leg was injured, and he told Yun-Su to leave him behind and escape. Pilsong smiled. No one would be left behind. Children must be protected by adults. Saying this, Pilsong stepped forward, rushing to attack the monster. On the other side, everyone was quickly striding towards the dungeon portal. Taijin was still hesitating, not knowing if his choice was right. The old man walking around suddenly saw the portal and reported back to the commander. But strangely, the portal was disappearing. Everyone around began to worry. Taijin felt uneasy. This dungeon portal appeared about 3 days ago. The portal closing was a sign that this dungeon was in chaos. Taijin suddenly thought of Yun-Su at that time. Could the portal closing be because these people had entered the portal earlier? In panic, Taijin tried to reassure everyone. The portal would reopen when we win. The Scorpion Gang boss was furious again. A rank D person and a dungeon above rank C. Winning was just wishful thinking. The old man standing next to him was also concerned that the group would be stuck here forever. Taijin calmly explained, if the dungeon is in chaos, the portal must open. Very risky, but that's their only chance to escape. In a critical situation, suddenly 3 more monsters appeared from nowhere. They were so numerous that Taijin's group was surrounded. There were 5 in total. Taijin calmly thought of a plan. He believed that by aiming at their weaknesses based on tactics, even rank D hunters could handle them. Then Taijin directed everyone to support each other. He took the lead, continuing his old trick, aiming for the monster's head and successfully killing it. But then another one appeared behind him, catching him off guard. Someone in the group stepped forward to rescue him, and Taijin escaped. Thanks to that, he successfully dealt with the next monster. 3 more left. Not impossible. The boss and his subordinates of the Scorpion Gang thought it was easy. Suddenly, from behind him, another large 3-headed monster appeared. Its scent was much stronger than the small fries from before. Everyone panicked, and Taijin recognized it as the boss, but didn't understand why it appeared near the portal. The 3-headed monster waved its tail, sweeping away all the people below. Unfortunately, a subordinate of the Scorpion Gang was crushed by it. He cried for help, but the boss ran away for his life. Just as he was about to be swallowed, Ji-Yun quickly shot it with an arrow. The monster was angry and immediately changed targets. Taijin jumped up, aimed for its head, and successfully chopped it off. But strangely, its head completely recovered. Taijin felt it was ineffective. The boss's weakness was not the head. While he was hesitating, he was knocked back by the monster. They advanced towards Ji-Yun, preparing to deal with her, when Pilsong suddenly ran over, telling her to hold on tight and quickly get out of danger. Pilsong also asked Ji-Yun if she was okay, and announced to everyone that they could leave the rest to him. Everyone had worked hard enough. Pilsong approached and asked if she was hurt. Ji-Yun blushed deeply because of his actions. Taijin saw Pilsong and asked about the situation over there, and Pilsong replied that everything had been resolved smoothly. Then he looked up at the 3-headed monster. It seemed the final boss had appeared. Taijin hastily excused himself, saying that he had misjudged the level of the portal, but Pilsong said even if Taijin was a rank C hunter, this portal was still too much for him. He had tried his best. After speaking, Pilsong immediately rushed towards the monster. He aimed for its head and quickly chopped it off. Suddenly Taijin said that the monster's head would grow back, so chopping it off was useless. Hearing this, Pilsong blamed him for not saying it sooner. Everyone around showed disappointment, worried that they would also die in this dungeon. Seeing the young people lacking will, Pilsong immediately rallied them. If they gave up when facing difficulties, they were just weak cowards. Taijin felt he was right, and immediately told everyone to support each other in fighting this boss. Then he quickly recovered thanks to Hunter Kim Chol-min. Both Ji-Yun and Yoon-ji also stepped forward to contribute. Seeing things progressing well, Pilsong felt happy. He decided to attack it first, just needing everyone behind him to cover his back. Pilsong didn't hesitate and rushed into battle. The other head of the monster prepared to breathe fire. Taijin told him to be careful. But then Pilsong still stood still without dodging. Fire surged fiercely towards him. At this moment, everyone thought he had died. But then from within the smoke, Pilsong sprang up, rushing straight towards them. Thanks to his terrifying speed, he quickly divided them into many pieces. Chol-min was shocked, not understanding why, being the same rank as them, his fighting style was so different. Even a rank C hunter like Taijin couldn't believe it. Thinking it was over, but no, Pilsong suddenly discovered that each cell of the monster that had been severed suddenly regenerated. Pilsong was thinking about how to kill them when suddenly he looked at the cliff, and an idea suddenly popped into his head. Pilsong launched himself up again. He split the cliff in half. Before the monster could regenerate, it was crushed by large rocks. Everyone was shocked. Suddenly a notification appeared. You have completed the dungeon raid mission. Everyone became happy because they had survived this difficult battle. They all felt grateful to Pilsong. The portal reappeared, welcoming them back. Pilsong landed and asked, and Taijin said they were lucky to have Pilsong here, although he didn't understand how a rank D hunter like him could defeat the boss, but it didn't matter, survival was the priority. At the Changchan Hunter Association. In the meeting room, Taijin was presenting the recent events to Park Shokshan. He told the whole story, that thanks to Guok Pilsong, they had escaped death and must do everything to recruit him to their team. Shokshan understood, and told Taijin to leave. Seeing Pilsong hesitating outside the door for a while, Shokshan had no choice but to tell him to come in. At this time, Shokshan showed concern that Pilsong using skills like a legendary hunter to save them might make them pay more attention and become more curious, and then Pilsong's true identity would be revealed. But could he not have intervened and just stood by and waited to die? It seemed unreasonable and everything seemed to be beyond Shokshan's expectations. Pilsong also said that it was a mutated rank C dungeon, and he also discovered that there was an organization using schemes to lure young hunters to work for them with bad intentions. Shokshan was shocked to hear this, and Pilsong said that he had found their base. Although he didn't want the children to be deceived again, Shokshan currently hadn't collected enough evidence to convict them. Even more dangerous, that organization might have someone backing them, so safety was not guaranteed. Pilsong intended to expand his investigation by watching video footage of recent raids, but his suggestion was stopped by Shokshan because the right to watch videos was limited to rank C hunters, while Pilsong was only a rank D hunter. Seeing Pilsong worried, Shokshan reassured Pilsong and gave him a piece of paper. At the Korea Hunter Association, people were lined up in droves, hoping to register for hunter rank advancement, including Ji-Yun, who also participated there. Worried about whether she would pass this exam, suddenly a young man cut in front of Ji-Yun. Ji-Yun showed anger. The guy didn't even give way and even bragged that he was at a higher rank than her. He saw her rank D and looked down on her outright. Then he also claimed that as a hunter, strength is power. He was threatening her when he suddenly noticed Ji-Yun was also pretty, so he made an excuse to touch her. Pilsong, out of nowhere, grabbed his hand, not letting him act inappropriately. He was shocked and asked if Pilsong was Ji-Yun's boyfriend. Pilsong vehemently denied it, and Ji-Yun was flustered and panicked. He saw Pilsong was also rank D like Ji-Yun, and threatened him again, but Pilsong already knew he was rank C. He exerted force to pull his hand back, but strangely, Pilsong's strength was so strong that he couldn't do it at all. Suddenly someone stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder, thinking some guy was going to start a fight with him, but who knew it was the security guards. They pulled him away and warned him that if he cut in line again, he would be kicked out. He still stubbornly threatened Pilsong one last time, but he didn't care. Ji-Yun immediately thanked Pilsong profusely. Knowing she came here for rank advancement, Pilsong also encouraged her that she would definitely succeed. Seeing his thoughtfulness, Ji-Yun suddenly felt the call of love. What's more, Pilsong even gave her a candy bar, making her heart pound. Ji-Yun nibbled on it and didn't understand why he gave her this. He was really childish. On the second floor, someone had been standing there watching everything from before. The girl in the red silk dress was wondering how fun it would be if Pilsong and the young man from earlier, who was Park San-Shuin, fought, and the young man from earlier was still angry about the humiliation just now. A rank C hunter, Kim Sung-jun, stepped forward and introduced himself as the one in charge of guiding everyone in the event to help hunters with the rank advancement guide from rank D. Then he announced the rules. 2 hunters of the same rank would fight each other first, the winner being the one who made the opponent surrender, and he would intervene if anything happened during the match. In addition, to rank up, it is necessary to go through a fight with a level supervisor. The fight will be more difficult, but of course, it is not necessary to win completely. The fight is just for the supervisor to know and self-assess the level of the person wanting to rank up. The Scorpion Gang boss Lin Wang was excited to hear this. Thanks to Pilsong in the mutated dungeon that time, he had been given more power, and Lin Wang was confident that no one here was his opponent. Suddenly Pilsong came over from nowhere and said that it turned out Lin Wang was his opponent. Seeing him, Lin Wang was startled. Fighting Pilsong like this would take forever to rank up. The match began. Ji-Yun was currently facing some opponent. He was beaten to the point of injury, and Ji-Yun took the opportunity to make a final blow, throwing a projectile attack. He couldn't avoid it and was hit, and the winner was Ji-Yun. Even so, she felt in her heart that she was much stronger than before. Pilsong stepped forward to congratulate her. Ji-Yun also approached to ask about his situation, and Pilsong said that of course he won because his opponent was that Scorpion Gang boss. Then she wondered that after raiding that dungeon sub-boss, she had become much stronger. Pilsong then explained that it was because she had completed a dungeon higher than her own rank, so her strength also increased accordingly. Pilsong also said that when defeating monsters in the dungeon, in addition to the items dropped, she could also absorb magic power from them, so she would become much stronger. He concluded that fighting in dungeons with strong monsters would help one become stronger, If Ji-Yun chose to complete a rank C sub-boss, she would also have become explosively powerful. Hearing this, Ji-Yun was happy and said to call her whenever he participated in a sub-boss, so she could leech off of him. Suddenly Pilsong became angry. He scolded her, saying participating in dungeons with dangerous monsters would be even more life-threatening for hunters. Did she dare? And last time was due to luck, not every time would be as lucky. Pilsong lectured, with the thought of relying on others for luck like that, one would lose their life at any time. Ji-Yun felt he looked really scary. Suddenly a girl walked over, curious to see what the couple was arguing about. Ji-Yun was embarrassed, and Pilsong vehemently denied it. In fact, that girl was rank S hunter Yu Sanyang, the supervisor of the rank-up matches. Then she said that the rumor about Pilsong being just a rank D hunter but having defeated the boss at the rank C portal was spreading. Everyone around heard this and started discussing excitedly. Pilsong tried to hide his identity. Sanyang said that she would rank Pilsong up to rank B if Pilsong wanted, because if the rumors were true, he was more than capable. Pilsong refused, saying he only came here to rank up to rank C and wanted nothing else. Suddenly the man he bumped into earlier stepped out. It was rank B hunter Park Sang-hyuk. Everyone around said he was so strong that he was comparable to a rank A hunter. Pilsong still denied that he wanted to test for rank B, but he hurriedly threw a javelin at him. But Pilsong Kip Toy dodged the attack. Then he reiterated that he only came here to rank up to rank C. Sang-hyuk also asked if Pilsong was scared. The fight was just starting. Then he also threatened that if he got injured and hospitalized, don't blame him. Sanyang excitedly sat down to watch the two talents compete. Pilsong saw Sang-hyuk keep advancing, and said that he would not be lenient anymore and would beat him until he sobered up. He was furious when he heard this and charged forward with his javelin. Pilsong was not afraid at all, catching the javelin with his bare hands, astonishing everyone. Pilsong also said that Sang-hyuk's level was only this much. Seeing Pilsong catch his attack, Sang-hyuk angrily yelled at him for being an arrogant bastard. Pilsong smiled and decided to teach him a lesson he would never forget. But what surprised Sang-hyuk was that Pilsong stared straight at him like a wild beast. Just using Pilsong's powerful aura was enough to make him back away and become extremely frightened. He felt like fighting Pilsong was like fighting a giant monster. Pilsong provoked him, but Sang-hyuk still refused to admit defeat. He charged forward, casting 3 skills: strength enhancement, speed enhancement, agility enhancement. Sanyang sensed that this fight would be very good. Because the effect would last for 5 minutes, Sang-hyuk decided to decide the victory or defeat right now and use all his strength to attack. Pilsong didn't need to strain himself like him. Instead he just raised his hand and flicked his forehead, causing him to fall over, also saying that for clueless guys like Sang-hyuk, the only way was to beat them until they sobered up. Sang-hyuk got up. Before he could recover, he was flicked again by Pilsong. This time he lay sprawled out on the floor. Pilsong asked him if he wanted to fight more or surrender quickly. With a head as hard as his, he would never know what it meant to admit defeat. He charged up to attack again when suddenly Sanyang stopped them both. She said that Sang-hyuk had already lost but refused to admit it. Saying that, Sanyang kicked him in the stomach. Sang-hyuk couldn't withstand the 2 hits and immediately passed out. With the matter settled, Sanyang turned to congratulate Pilsong for ranking up to rank B. Pilsong refused, saying she had just stolen his opponent, so what was there to win? Sanyang even leaned closer and caressed Pilsong, also saying to beat her when they hadn't even fought yet. She offered to ask Pilsong to go to a quiet place to talk. Pilsong had no choice but to accept, wondering what her scheme was. Seeing Sanyang being so close to her crush just now made Ji-Yun furious. The two went to Sanyang's research room in the association. She offered him a cold drink, then went straight to the main point. She asked if he wanted to work for the association. This startled him. Sanyang said Pilsong had potential, but to avoid revealing his identity, Pilsong replied that he was only rank D, so how could he work? Sanyang approached and pulled back the curtain. Behind the curtain was a strangely shaped machine. She introduced this as the dungeon difficulty measuring device, the thing that had helped the association develop. Pilsong was shocked. This was the first time he had seen it. Before there was this machine, many hunters had fallen because they didn't know the difficulty beforehand. But now everything was much simpler. The machine could calculate the suitability for each hunter's rank. Then she guessed that Pilsong also knew that the machine still couldn't accurately diagnose all dungeon levels. Everyone already knew that. Currently, the machine only measured accuracy up to 99.5%, the rest were still some errors. That meant if low-rank hunters entered one of those remaining tunnels, the mortality rate would be very high. So currently many hunters still didn't dare to take risks. In addition, there were also huge losses for the association and a serious shortage of manpower. Pilsong wondered why they didn't announce the margin of error, but Sanyang only said that a few sacrifices didn't matter for the sake of collective sacrifice. Pilsong was angry. He thought that human lives were not a joke and should be decided by them, not let anyone decide for them. Sanyang smiled when she heard this, asking if Pilsong had refused the offer. Pilsong replied that it was indeed a rotten organization and quickly left. Sanyang felt he was very straightforward, but in that case, he should be taught a lesson. On his way home, Pilsong felt annoyed by pointless things. He thought if Shochan knew, he would nag again. Suddenly someone appeared from behind him and called Pilsong's name. He smiled sinisterly. A few days ago, someone had reported Pilsong's strange abilities to some boss. It seemed they were preparing to plan to search for the rank B hunter Guok Pilsong. Turns out it was Commander Taijin. Taijin then took Pilsong to meet Association President Shoshan. Taijin also told him that Pilsong had ranked up from rank D to rank B, causing Shochan to look at him with angry eyes. Chun told Taijin to go out, to let him punish Pilsong for that matter. After hearing his explanation, Chun then said that he had fallen into Sanyang's trap. Sanyang was originally a rank S hunter and representative of the Hunter Association. It seemed that the act of recruiting talented hunters was just an excuse for Sanyang and the association to approach. Chun analyzed each of her purposes, which was to rank Pilsong up to rank B to make the recruitment process seem natural. If Pilsong lost to Sang-hyuk, they could deal with him immediately without hesitation. Fortunately, Pilsong had refused it, so the plan fell apart. Knowing that Sanyang would definitely find a way to take revenge on Pilsong, Chun offered to invite Pilsong to join Chun's Blue Sky Guild. But Pilsong also refused. Chun reiterated that Pilsong must join a guild to ensure stability. It was known that the Blue Sky Guild was one of the 5 strongest guilds in the country and could act as a shield for Pilsong. But Pilsong didn't understand what the fuss was about. On the contrary, he still kept his prejudices. Chun had no choice but to give up and said it was up to him. After talking, Pilsong walked out to the waiting area. Suddenly Ji-yoon chased after him and bragged that she had successfully ranked up to rank C. Seeing this, Pilsong congratulated her, and Ji-yoon said that it was thanks to his help. Ji-yoon also asked if he came here because of the invitation to join the Blue Sky Guild. Pilsong replied that he didn't join and had no intention of joining any guild. Suddenly, a man walked over and greeted Pilsong. He was Hunter Lee Wan from the North Star Guild, representative of the recruitment department. He also said that the North Star Guild was ranked 11th and because they recognized Pilsong's extraordinary talent, they invited him to join. Pilsong gave a straightforward answer that he still didn't want to join any guild, causing Lee Wan to freeze for 5 seconds. However, Wan didn't give up, running to stop Pilsong and saying that he could come to the presentation. He used his unique marketing tactic, promising that if he attended, he would be given a rank C weapon. Ji-yeon's eyes lit up when she saw this. Before Pilsong could react, Ji-yeon dragged him to go right away. At the organizer's headquarters, Ji-yeon was excited and ran to receive documents. Pilsong didn't understand why she liked to go and dragged him along. Ji-yeon also told him not to be too suspicious and innocently skipped into the meeting room. But when the two of them walked in, the room became dark and there was no one there. It turned out they had been trapped. Lee Wan stepped out, smiling at the two people who had been deceived and even brought a teammate to deal with. He announced, "The guild joining process begins." Both Pilsong and Ji-yeon were surrounded. Pilsong asked if they were going to imprison them and force them to sign to join the guild. Lee Wan took out a piece of paper, telling them to just calm down and sign here. Pilsong then asked what if he refused. Of course he would take action then. The group surrounded them. He continued to explain the guild joining regulations. Ji-yeon didn't know what to do when Pilsong suddenly spoke up, saying he would join if he liked it. This was exactly in Lee Wan's plan. He handed him the paper. In fact, it had been imbued with a fairly strong curse. Just signing it would make them subservient to the gang forever. While overjoyed, Pilsong wanted to meet the guild leader because he wanted to know what the guild was like and what the leader was like. He immediately agreed and immediately called the guild leader. The person on the other end of the line was rank A hunter Go Young-hoon, who also received a good signal, and praised Lee Wan for doing a great job. Lee Wan announced to wait a little longer. The guild leader would arrive soon. Ji-yeon felt guilty, but then Pilsong comforted her, and she felt less anxious. Go Young-hoon opened the door and stepped in, warmly welcoming them. Pilsong asked straight up if he was the guild leader, causing Lee Wan to scold him for being a bit rude. Go Young-hoon approached and patted Pilsong on the shoulder and expressed his belief in him, and Pilsong wondered why there was this kind of method of inviting people to join a guild. The guild leader explained that the group was on the path to development to achieve the goal of being the top 10 best hunter groups in Korea. He also said that just by joining the guild, Pilsong would rank up to rank S more easily, and also promised not to mistreat him. Hearing this, Pilsong then asked if only those things were enough to make him join. His words surprised both the guild leader and Lee Wan. The bodyguard standing behind was about to give him a beating when he was slapped in the face by Pilsong. He also said that a low-level guild like this wanted to invite him. Wasn't it just forcing others to obey them? Li Wan was angry. He used ice coffin magic to attack Pilzong. As the ice was about to freeze him, Pilzong stomped down hard. Then he rushed towards him. Before he could cast an ice shield to dodge, he was punched in the face, breaking his nose. The guild leader was shocked to see this. Could Pilzong be hiding his skills? Everyone around rushed up to attack Pilzong, but they were all beaten and lay scattered on the ground. Suddenly the guild leader from behind used a knife to attack Pilzong sneakily. Flames also burst out from it. It turned out to be the Fire Dragon Tooth, a legendary rank weapon. He also said that he had picked up this sword in a rank S dungeon. Just holding it made him feel confident. Pilzong then scolded him for being an idiot because just relying on it made him dare to say he was not afraid of anyone. He was angry and charged up to attack Pilzong, but he Kip-Toy dodged the attack. Pilzong also taught him that with weak skills, any weapon was useless. This made him furious and he charged up to attack Pilzong again. Pilzong grabbed a large sword under his feet and rushed up to block him. While he was shocked, Pilzong used his bare hands to knock him out in the stomach. Going back to the past, Go Young-hoon at that time was surprised that the strongest hunter left the team. Once a very enthusiastic person to create the strongest hunter group, but he was also helpless because everyone gradually left and did not return. He used to think that one day they would return to contribute, but no. The dream of building a powerful army, they thought it was just a dream and too far-fetched for him. Since then, Go Young-hoon had embarked on a ruthless path just to persuade talented people to join his team. Hunters who were targeted would try to persuade them, and if they refused the invitation, they would have to pay a heavy price. Thanks to this, his guild had gradually risen to 11th place. So he became even more convinced that what he was doing was right. The regret in his heart quickly extinguished. Go Young-hoon woke up. In front of him was Changchan guild leader Sok-chun. He startled, not understanding why this guy was here. He also thought Pilzong was from the Changchan guild, making him angry and punching him. Then he repeatedly reiterated that he had not joined a guild or organization. Go Young-hoon looked confused. Sok-chun explained that he was here to help Pilzong, because Pilzong had helped him before. He was shocked, not understanding how strong his strength was, that Sok-chun needed to ask for help. Then Pilzong questioned him why he did things to this extent. He did this just because he wanted to establish a really strong guild, even knowing it was wrong. He still did it. Pilzong asked if to be strong, the guild must be unscrupulous, causing him to hesitate. Then he also said that in this world, the weak had no right to speak, and the responsibility of a guild leader like him was to make this guild stronger. Pilzong again asked back if the method changed, would he be willing to change his thinking or not, but he affirmed that the National Guild Association would never change its decision. Suddenly Pilzong declared that he would do everything to change that. Sok-chun was curious to see what Pilzong's plan was, and he replied that he would create a large force to confront the National Association. Outside, Ji-yoon was leaning in to listen, not knowing what everyone was discussing. Taijin also appeared there, and then she knew he was the Changchan guild leader. Work done, the two walked out. Ji-yoon and Taijin saw this and rushed over to ask Pilzong what his relationship with Sok-chun was. Rewinding a bit, Sok-chun didn't understand how Pilzong planned to build a powerful army, and he immediately replied that people must make mistakes to understand their self-worth, so give them a chance. Sok-chun sighed in resignation, worthy of being an experienced old man. On the other side, Grizzly guild leader Seo Kwang-ho, a rank S hunter, was weightlifting. Suddenly the assistant announced someone had come. It was Yu Dogin from the crime prevention team of the Hunter Association headquarters. Ao Kwang-ho didn't understand why he was here. When Yu Dogin suddenly asked if he knew Go Young-hoon, Ao Kwang-ho angrily threw the weight he was lifting at him. At this time, he said that he had been defeated by a rank B hunter, making him excited and wanting him to tell more details about that information. Taijin was currently fighting a two-headed beast. He charged forward, swinging his sword at it, but could not injure it at all. Pilzong standing behind directed him not to hit its hard parts. Pilzong didn't understand why things had turned out like this. Going back to that time a bit, Taijin was too proud of Pilzong and said that he wanted to be his disciple. Pilzong asked why not go find that guild leader, but find him for what? Taijin said he was busy all day, and then Pilzong realized that Sok-chun was actually finding work for him to do. Saying that, Pilzong agreed. Returning to reality, Taijin had defeated that two-headed beast. Pilzong then praised that Taijin's skills had improved a bit compared to before. If he practiced more, he could rank up to rank B. While they were talking, a group of people who didn't know where they came from had been following them for a long time. They suddenly recognized Pilzong as a hunter who had ranked up from rank D to rank B, but some of them even sneered at Pilzong. Taijin was extremely angry when he heard this, saying his master was not that kind of person. Pilzong ignored it. He thought that only an idiot would pay attention to what others thought of him, and told Taijin to leave quickly. But it seemed that someone had been secretly following everything. At the location, everyone was gathering in one place and preparing to go home. Then suddenly someone called Pilzong and asked if his rank up was true. Then he said that he also wanted to be Pilzong's disciple. Pilzong immediately refused and said that he was not yet qualified to receive disciples. Then Pilzong left, and he didn't give up either. Pilzong didn't understand why he lost his will like that, and his face drooped, saying that he knew beforehand that he wouldn't be accepted. Suddenly Taijin wondered why Pilzong didn't accept when a naturally shy person like him opened his mouth. It must have been difficult, something must have happened. Taijin tried to persuade him, but Pilzong still kept his prejudice. He thought that the attitude of learning was also necessary. He then said that he had that. Taijin kept pestering Pilzong to help, and was finally scolded by him. At this time, Taijin explained that people with belief should be given a chance. That was the spirit that Chang-chan always upheld. Out of options, Pilzong agreed and told him to go hunting with him next time. He was overjoyed, quickly thanking Pilzong profusely. He also introduced his name as Li Zhongwan. The three of them greeted each other. Zhongwan also said that he was the first disciple, so call him senior brother Zhongwan. Pilzong was annoyed, secretly thinking what kind of person he was. A few days later, in a raid, a fierce monster stepped forward, but Zhongwan just stood frozen, not knowing how to handle it. So Pilzong had to rescue him. Pilzong angrily scolded Zhongwan. Still not learning? Zhongwan could only apologize. And Pilzong kept scolding, not understanding how he ranked up to rank C, but no matter how much he scolded, he only apologized. Pilzong was annoyed and didn't know how to handle it. They continued another raid. Zhongwan had to face another large monster. Although this was not the first time, he was still sweating, his whole body trembling. He tried to cast a weapon enhancement skill, but before he could finish casting, the monster raised its hand, about to attack him. Pilzong quickly chopped its hand off. And then Pilzong cast the final skill, successfully chopping it into hundreds of pieces. Zhongwan thanked him again for saving him. Then Zhongwan bravely charged to attack the monster, but it had no effect. Pilzong again scolded him. Calm down, aim at the target's weak point, don't be hasty. Pilzong couldn't keep calm anymore either, angrily leaving. Taijin came to comfort him. But then Zhongwan said he would go to another place to clear his mind. In a cave, Zhongwan angrily punched the wall repeatedly and kept being sad because he was treated like this. He also intended to give up, but then Pilzong called him back, forcing him to run back immediately. At the Chang-chan Association, Pilzong was yawning. Sok-chun asked Pilzong, tired but still coming to his guild for what? He immediately replied that it was because he had nowhere to go. Then Sok-chun said why not join the company, and he said it was because he liked freedom. Sok-chun was also worried about the organization not taking any action after Pilzong's clash with the 11th strongest guild. Then Sok-chun also said that Pilzong coming here often made people think that the guild leader was favoring him, and even thought that the two of them were in love. Pilzong angrily exploded. Sok-chun had no choice but to tell Pilzong either to join or limit his visits, but in the end Pilzong still chose to leave. Sok-chun reminded Pilzong to pay attention to the Grizzly Guild because they specialized in targeting the features of old people. Pilzong also asked if that guild was on par with the North Star Guild, but Sok-chun replied that it was about the same but ranked 10th, more dangerous. Pilzong didn't care much and then left right away. Outside, Pilzong immediately gathered his two disciples and told them that today there would be a meeting. The purpose of this meeting was to make everyone closer. The two were not yet used to this. Pilzong took the lead first, asking each person what young people usually did in their free time. Taijin said that he played Go and walked. Pilzong was also interested in Go, but Zhongwan was not. He was scolded again. Then it was Zhongwan's turn. When asked what he usually did, Zhongwan took everyone to CGV. When asked, it was known that Zhongwan liked to read manga and stories. He explained that he wanted to be a hunter because he wanted to be like a main character in a story. Zhongwan was shy and thought it was childish, but Pilzong fully supported it. It was a great dream. Suddenly Ji-yoon walked over from nowhere, catching Pilzong reading manga with his disciples. In a small corner of the cafe, Ji-han clutched the book tightly in her hands, her eyes fixed on the page, an unspoken atmosphere of low spirits radiating around her. Yi-hyun sighed and leaned back, placing the book on the table with a soft thud. She groaned inwardly. What am I even doing? Pilsung's face flashed in her mind's eye, radiating a certain glow, bringing with it a fluttering feeling. Ji-han blushed and thought, he's not even that handsome, but why does he keep popping up in my head? She recalled the scene of them standing side by side, and while she was still a bit bewildered, his face was brimming with confidence and exceptional aura. Yi-hyun mentally scolded herself, that her feelings weren't what she thought they were. He's great at dungeon hunting, but How could I possibly like a kid? The more she thought, the redder Ji-hun's face became. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed unconsciously. It's probably because he's not like the other ordinary guys. Ji-hun remembered childhood scenes where her grandfather held her in his arms. The space was filled with beautiful little flowers and a somewhat childish conversation between them. "Grandpa, I want to marry you someday." Ji-hun unconsciously raised her hand to touch her lips. Her eyes seemed to brighten. She thought to herself, "It feels like the nostalgia of when I was a child with Grandpa." Her train of thought was interrupted by an unanswered question. "I wonder what Pilsung is doing now." Ji-hun stood up and turned away from her seat. Before leaving, she didn't forget to inform Yoonji, who was sitting with her and looking after her books. "Yoonji, I'm going to the restroom for a bit." The bespectacled girl glanced at her and nodded. Go ahead." Ji-hun, while walking, lost herself in thought. She blushed and sighed, "I miss him so much." Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in Ji-hun's field of vision. She softly hummed. The hum became clearer as Ji-hun confirmed that the person was indeed Pilsung, the one she was missing. He was sitting with his back to her, seemingly unaware of Ji-hun's presence right behind him. Pilsung glanced back. He held a half-read book in his hand. He gently asked, "Is that you, Ji-hun?" Pilsung gestured for her to come closer. Around him were 2 or 3 other people sitting across from him. What a coincidence, she thought. Everyone is here today. Ji-hun was surprised and asked, "Why are you here?" Pilsung smiled and replied, "I'm just hanging out with them for a bit." Ji-hun hesitated and walked closer to them. She widened her eyes, and the excitement mingled with surprise was evident in her gaze. Ji-hun silently thanked in her head, "I already get to see him. How lucky can I be?" Suddenly, a somewhat inconspicuous young man from the group stood up. He spoke, embarrassing her. "What's the relationship between the master and this beautiful girl?" The person added another sentence, causing Ji-hun, who was standing to the side, to freeze. The embarrassment consumed her whole body. "It looks like they're on a date." After hearing this, she was overjoyed. Pink, dreamy bubbles emanated around her. Ji-hun gently refuted it, poking her fingers together, clearly expressing her shyness. "Dating? What are you talking about?" This action of hers caused the young man to have a big question mark above his head. Pilsung, seemingly not understanding the feelings in other people's intentions, sighed and folded his arms in front of his chest as he responded to her. "Yeah, that's not quite right. I only know a little about her." This straightforward innocence of his made Ji-hun freeze for a few seconds, along with a clear helplessness. The young man, after hearing the confirmation of the relationship from both, began to introduce himself. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lee Jong-won. Pleased to meet you," he said while raising one hand to smooth his hair, which almost completely covered his eyes, his face reddening slightly. Ji-hun, after receiving a cold shoulder from Pilsung, wasn't in a good mood. She sighed, replying to him perfunctorily, "Oh, yeah." This sudden contrasting attitude made Jong-won even more confused. Seeing that Ji-hun hadn't returned, Yoonji got up to look for her. She approached the place where everyone was standing. While walking, she called out, "Ji-hun, are you still not done?" Suddenly, she softly hummed when she recognized the other people, including Pilsung. He saw her and greeted her. "Oh, Sister Yoonji is here too. It's been a while since I've seen you." Yoonji responded enthusiastically, "Yeah, hello." She gestured towards Ji-hun, who was standing rooted near Pilsung. "Ji-hun, are we leaving now?" Only then did she vaguely realize that it was time to leave. "Huh? Oh yeah." Pilsung, seeing this, quickly waved goodbye to the 2 girls. "Are you 2 leaving already? Then, see you later." Ji-hun, seeing this scene, was momentarily helpless, not knowing what else to say. A thought gradually flashed in her mind, it's a waste to part like this. Obviously, Ji-hun was not satisfied with seeing Pilsung only briefly. She called out, "Hey!" He heard and asked back, "What is it?" Ji-hun made a suggestion to prolong their rare meeting. "We're going to karaoke. Wanna come along?" Pilsung looked confused and asked back, "Karaoke?" She calmly confirmed, "Yeah, I think it's more fun with more people. It's boring with only 2 people singing." He heard this and just smiled in response. Pilsung also carefully held up the book he was reading to prove his words. "You 2 were reading, right?" But before he could finish speaking, Jong-won quickly chimed in. Judging from his flushed face, it wasn't hard to understand the meaning of his actions. "Let's go to karaoke. While we are young, we are singing." Fearing that Pilsung wouldn't agree, Jong-won also turned and asked the person who hadn't spoken at all, "What do you think, Taijin?" He heard and asked back, "Huh?" And so, the scene shifted to another place, where a large TV screen was displaying the lyrics of the song. The whole room was dyed in a gentle purple color. Next to the TV were also 2 microphones. Taijin put his hands on his hips. He stood near the large electronic screen and sighed, "Wow. It's been a long time since I've been to karaoke." At the table and chairs in the middle of the room, Yoonji and Jihan were sitting on one chair, opposite Pilsung and Jongwon, who were about to sit down. Jihan closed her eyes, slightly frowning. She was secretly dissatisfied. Ooh, why are they all going? Suddenly, an idea flashed in her mind. No way. Jihan took the remote and quickly manipulated it. I must make friends with him today. After finishing the operation, Jihan stood up, excited. She called out loudly, "Hey, Pilsung!" The large screen displayed the title of the song All For You. She unhesitatingly asked him directly, "Can you sing this song with me?" Pilsung, from start to finish, seemed to understand nothing. He stiffly replied blankly, "Sorry, I've never heard this song before." Jongwon immediately volunteered, "Oh, let me sing with you." A series of events occurred that surprised Jihan to the point of bewilderment. She cried silently in her heart, "Why is this happening?" In contrast to the gloom around her, the young man happily immersed himself in the song, while Pilsung simply sat and watched them sing together. After that song, she once again made a suggestion to lure him in. "Come on, Pilsung, sing a song." Jihan's face was slightly flushed. She thought to herself, then switched to a song Pilsung can sing, and it's done. The large screen once again changed to the title of another song. This time it was Give Me Back My Youth. Pilsung firmly held the microphone in his hand. His whole soul was in tune with the lyrics. He sang with great enthusiasm. "Kialyan, give it back. Oh oh, my youth, answer me here." Jihan sat below the seats, clenching her hands into fists. Her face was twisted, looking very gloomy, in contrast to Pilsung, who was satisfied above. She wondered, what kind of music is this? Can't he choose something more normal? Suddenly, Yoonji turned and whispered to Jihan. She called, "Hey, Jihan." She replied, "What is it?" She hesitated for a moment and then expressed the doubt in her heart. Are you interested in Pilsung?" This unintentionally hit her soft spot, causing Jihan to be stunned for a moment. She quickly reacted, raising her hands to rub her red cheeks. Jihan couldn't help but ask again, "What?" Yoonji, after seeing all her actions, confirmed her speculation. "Yeah, it's true." Jihan, realizing that she couldn't deny it anymore, turned her head and sighed. She slightly lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, but he doesn't seem to be interested. I guess I have to give up." Yoonji, hearing this, grabbed her hand as a word of comfort. She gently reassured her friend, "Don't worry, Jihan. Leave it to me. I'll get you both on the ship." She also raised her thumb to show her credibility. In Jihan's eyes at this moment, she was like shining. She said emotionally, "Yoonji." At this moment, the electronic screen displayed the number 100 for Pilsung's song just now, accompanied by a very distinctive sound. Taijin on the side couldn't help but praise, his face clearly showing the words proud. He said, "Master, you have singing talent too." Pilsung, being praised, was embarrassed and raised his hand to rub his nose. He modestly replied, "When I was young, people often told me I should be a singer." Taijin quickly caught the focus. He asked again, "Huh, when you were young?" Realizing that he had just let slip, Pilsung immediately corrected himself, "Oh, nothing." Suddenly, Yoonji interrupted the compliments. She called, "Pilsung." He gently replied, Yoonji pointed one hand towards Jihan sitting next to her. The next words she said made Jihan unexpectedly startled. It seems Jihan forgot her wallet at the cafe earlier. "Can you go back and look for it with her?" Pilsung looked confused and asked again to make sure, "You're asking me?" At the same time, Jongwon chimed in, "Oh, let me." Jihan's face darkened as she was always interrupted by the young man. Yoonji, realizing the situation was not good, quickly kicked him hard in the leg, causing him to be in pain. Jongwon, after receiving a kick from Yoonji, sat down on the chair and rubbed the place that was just kicked. She didn't forget to turn back and ask Pilsung, "Just a little help. Can you do it?" Pilsung was not at all suspicious. He calmly replied with an He quickly called her, "Okay, go with me." Jihan, after achieving her goal, was overjoyed. Her face was slightly flushed. She hesitated for a moment before reacting to what he had just said. "Huh? Oh, yeah." Yoonji helped her friend and clearly wrote the words proud on her face. She turned and gave a friendly thumbs up to Jihan, who was still bewildered. Opposite the two girls, Jongwon witnessed everything and had some thoughts of his own. The scene shifted again back to the cafe where the two first met. Pilsung stood there casually. Opposite him was Jihan, who was somewhat shy because of embarrassment. He saw her coming out and quickly inquired, "It's good that you found your wallet." Jihan gently replied to Pilsung, "Yeah, thank you for helping me." He also asked again, "So, should we go back there now?" Hearing this, she jumped in surprise and exclaimed, "Huh, what?" Pilsung innocently looked a little surprised at her reaction, but he still asked gently, "What's wrong?" "Oh, do you need to do anything else?" Jihan momentarily couldn't speak. She hesitated. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. She became flustered. In her mind, questions kept flashing, filled with confusion. What should I do? This is the opportunity Yoonji created for me. But her unusual hesitation fell into Pilsung's eyes. A question mark appeared in his head. He gently asked again, "What's wrong?" After thinking for a while, she finally decided to gather all her courage and ask him, "Pilsung." Jihan hesitated a bit. "Do you have a crush on someone?" In contrast to her, he seemed completely unconcerned about this issue, even asking again to make sure. "Have a crush on someone?" His face darkened a little and he answered her, "I did before." Hearing this, Jihan couldn't hide the joy in her heart. All emotions were clearly expressed on her face. Before then the two didn't have a happy ending, she asked. Pilsung gently replied to her, "That person has passed away." This answer seemed to be something Jihan had never thought of. Her whole body was momentarily stiff with a sudden surprise. As soon as she understood the situation, Jihan immediately hurried. "I'm sorry." She was momentarily a little panicked. "I don't know what I'm talking about." Pilsung just smiled and put his hands in his coat pockets. He reassured her, "It's okay, it's all in the past." Jihan's eyes gradually darkened. There was no joy, but instead a little lingering regret. Her complexion darkened noticeably. In her heart, Jihan was blaming herself. "Did I ask an unnecessary question? I touched on a sad story right away." She lowered her eyes and didn't dare to look directly into Pilsung's eyes. Her remorse was still clearly lingering. "It seems that your relative also died while dungeon hunting, right?" She carefully recalled, feeling more and more how foolish her previous question was. Pilsung, on the other hand, was completely the opposite of her. He gently sighed and turned his face in another direction. He thought to himself, "I suddenly miss her a lot. She went ahead of me." Remembering something, Pilsung immediately asked Jihan, "But why did you suddenly ask me that question?" The curiosity was evident on his face. Was it because of Jongwon? This time it was Jihan's turn to be bewildered by his question. "Huh, what are you talking about?" Pilsung didn't spare any thought and directly expressed his own thoughts. "Because I think Jongwon has feelings for Jihyun." He also carefully added, "The two of you sang karaoke so well together." Jihyun, after hearing this, felt like she wanted to be petrified. She suddenly shouted in a firm manner, clasping her hands together, her cheeks flushed, and her eyebrows furrowed. She clearly affirmed, "I already have someone I like." Pilsung, hearing this, became even more interested. His eyes were full of curiosity. He put his hands on his hips, as if expecting an answer. "Oh, really? I just found out. Is it someone you know?" Her lips were rosy. The worry was clearly present. She pursed her lips. "That." Jihan suddenly covered her face with both hands, which were flushed with embarrassment. She left a sentence and quickly left. "I'll go to the restroom for a bit." Pilsung was full of doubts. He sighed and asked himself, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with young people these days? The scene turned back to the karaoke bar. The group now only had Yoonji and Taijin sitting opposite each other. The atmosphere between them was extremely silent. No one said anything, leading to an even heavier atmosphere. In the end, she was the first to speak. "Everyone's been gone for a long time." Taijin quickly followed up in a strained manner. "Really, haha." He frowned and added, "Lee Jongwon has also been in the restroom for a long time. I wonder if he's okay." Yoonji gently reassured, "They'll both be back soon." She was a little worried. She wondered in her head, is everything okay with Jihyun? Over here, Jihyun stared at something in front of her and became stunned. Opposite her was Jongwon, who was bowing his head. His cheeks flushed. She asked, "Jongwon, why are you here?" She was thinking in her head, her eyes fixed on the young man. "What's going on? What does he want to say to me?" Jongwon stammered and called, "Sister." Jihyun couldn't help but think nonsense in her head. Could it be what Pilsung said? Is he interested in me? Jongwon mustered all his courage. He closed his eyes and shouted, "Jihyun." She was standing opposite him, thinking, this heavy atmosphere. He stammered and spoke, "I'm sorry." At the same time, Jihyun felt a surge of killing intent from behind her. The whole large body and a face that was mostly malicious blocked the light behind, and Jihyun trembled involuntarily. She slowly turned to look. She widened her pupils in surprise. She could only stammer two words, "Who is it?" Then, only her echoing scream and the guilty face of Jongwon remained. Back at the cafe's counter, Pilsung, after waiting for a while, couldn't help but wonder, what's taking Jihyun so long? He rubbed his head. Pilsung carefully estimated in his head, it's been over 30 minutes, hasn't it? Why isn't she back yet? Suddenly, a buzzing sound from the phone in his pocket caught his attention. He softly hummed, his gaze shifting to the pocket. Pilsung picked up the phone, his voice low as he answered, "Hello?" The person on the other end asked him a question. "You're looking for a girl, aren't you?" This question momentarily shocked Pilsung, widening his eyes. Alarm began to creep into his mind. When he clearly realized the other person's less than pleasant intentions, Pilsung coldly asked back, his eyes flashing with a clear killing intent, "Who is this?" The person on the other end sounded extremely fierce. 2 locks of curly hair fell forward. The guy smirked. "You ask who I am? I'm Guang Ho." The guy glared threateningly. In his voice was a full of challenge. "I'm the protector of your group." Pilsung paused for a moment to remember the guy. He clearly expressed his displeasure as well as a warning. "You're doing something that's making me a bit uncomfortable." Guang Ho got angry. He answered him in the tone of a superior, "Don't talk nonsense, obediently follow my orders, and that girl will be safe." Pilsung didn't have much patience. He gruffly told the guy, "All right, just tell me what you want." The look of triumph on Guang Ho's face became even more apparent. His eyes flashed with deadly killing intent. "Isn't that better? I'll send you the meeting place. Go there alone and quietly." After speaking, he immediately hung up the phone. Pilsung stared at the pitch-black phone screen. His whole body was ablaze with anger. The annoyance was evident through his deadly look. The scene shifted to an abandoned house, which looked relatively dilapidated. There were no houses or anything around. The only light in the dark night was the light emanating from inside the abandoned house. Inside, it was filled with items used for construction, from fuel tanks to wooden planks, to steel bars. There was also a group of people standing huddled in a circle. Guang Ho sat nonchalantly on a chair, his face sullen and uncomfortable from having to wait. He complained dissatisfiedly, "Too late. We're already past the appointment time." An underling standing next to him interjected, "Boss, will he really come?" Guang Ho's eyes suddenly became sharp, clearly displeased with the underling's question. "What?" The underling also realized that he had just said something he shouldn't have. He immediately corrected himself. I'm sorry." Suddenly, Guang Ho's hand tightly grabbed his face, making his whole body stiff with fear. Guang Ho grabbed the underling's head violently. The strength was concentrated in each finger, lifting his whole body. The pain from the head spread, causing him to groan a few times. Ah. The next second, the underling's entire body was thrown forward with a huge force by Guang Ho. His body collided with the cold ground, making a painful thud. Guang Ho stood with one hand on his hip. His eyes were filled with killing intent, staring at the underling lying sprawled on the ground, his eyes wide open. Around him were the others, watching the fun and Jihan tied to the chair. He growled, "I've told you how many times to call me chairman, not boss. Is it because of guys like you that everyone treats us like thugs on the streets?" Guang Ho raised his hand and pointed it at his own head, as if wanting everyone present to engrave his warning into their heads. "Remember this well. We are not thugs, but the Grizzly Society, official members of the Hunter Society. If you speak nonsense again, don't blame me if you end up like that guy." Finished, he turned and walked back to his original seated position. He waved his hand to one of the other underlings. "Take him away," he ordered. Someone immediately ran out in a hurry, and as he went, the person replied, "Yes." Guang Ho sat down on the chair and sighed heavily. The atmosphere around him suddenly became colder, a feeling of oppression. Another person was bold enough to ask, "Chairman, what did Mr. Go Yong-hoon say?" Mentioning him, Guang Ho's eyes became colder. He asked back in a low voice, That coward?" Guang Ho remembered the scene of a beautiful morning at a large company. Yong-hoon was sitting in his office. The voice from the employee outside interrupted his train of thought. "Hey, you can't go in." Guang Ho still used his arrogant attitude, ignoring the employee's words, and kicked the door open and entered the room. Guang Ho's fierce face broke into a smile that looked extremely dangerous. He smiled and spoke as if he was extremely familiar. "Long time no see, Go Yong-hoon." He, after knowing that the person who came was Guang Ho, felt a little apprehensive. Yong-hoon said, "Co Guang Ho, I don't remember inviting you here. What do you want from me?" Guang Ho smiled and walked indifferently towards his desk. "Not long ago, I just heard a very interesting story." He paused slightly and then continued, "I heard you were just beaten up by a Class B guy, huh?" This sentence seemed to touch his sore spot, causing him to freeze for a few seconds. Yong-hoon thought for a moment and responded to him with a not-so-friendly look and a counter-question. "It seems that you don't have anything to do today, right? You're so free that you came here to mock me?" Guang Ho calmly replied, "I just want to know which hunter defeated you." The atmosphere between the two was vaguely stretched. After a moment of silence, Yong-hoon spoke to remind him, "After all, we are old friends. I sincerely advise you, don't get involved with them, or you'll regret it." In contrast to his goodwill, Guang Ho seemed not very satisfied. Guang Ho asked back sarcastically, "Friends?" Suddenly, he seemed to have gone mad and burst into hearty laughter. The mocking laughter echoed throughout the room. Guang Ho smirked. He turned around and walked away. He raised his hand and waved, as if saying goodbye. Before leaving, he didn't forget to leave a sentence full of arrogance. Just wait and see whether I will regret it or not. Yang Hoon looked at this arrogant attitude that didn't put anyone in his eyes and felt a little pensive. At this moment, Guang Ho had also escaped from his train of thought. Realizing that someone was approaching, Guang Ho softly hummed. Both he and his underlings turned their heads to look. His eyes swept across a flicker of displeasure when he realized who was coming. He teased, "We're in the middle of a conversation, and someone's interrupting us." The person who came was Pilsung. His whole body was full of energy. Each step exuded a heavy killing intent. Pilsung, with a sullen face, walked in through the main door. Opposite him was Guang Ho, who was sitting and laughing gleefully. Around him were the underlings. He taunted, "Oh, I waited until almost the end of the day before seeing your face." Pilsung was too lazy to talk to him. He didn't say anything further, but directly asked with a roughness clearly visible on his face, "Where is Jihan?" Guang Ho stared at him and chuckled. "Why are you so impatient?" Pilsung glanced towards a corner of the room. Yihian, her hands tied, was sitting on a chair. Her golden hair covered her face. She didn't move, and looked like she was unconscious. "She's still safe here, don't worry." Seeing Jihan's current condition, Pilsung momentarily widened his eyes in surprise. He looked worriedly towards the group of people opposite him. "What did you guys do to her?" Guang Ho, seeing his worried appearance, became even more complacent. He smirked. "I told you not to worry. She just took some drugs, so she's unconscious for a while." Around him and Guang Ho's group was a mess of all sorts. Pilsung felt confused by their actions. He spoke, questioning, "What do you want, after all? Why do you have to do this?" At this moment, Guang Ho stood up from his chair. The light from the electric lamp obscured his face. It was momentarily difficult to see what his current expression looked like. "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself just now." He stood straight, the air of arrogance exuding from his aura. "I am Co Guang Ho, the Grizzly Society chairman." Pilsung was surprised, remembering his previous reminder. His pupils widened clearly. He thought to himself, "The Grizzly Society?" He looked at Guang Ho standing high and mighty over there. He coldly uttered a judgment. "People say you're crazy, and it's not wrong." Guang Ho, hearing this, only chuckled in response. He didn't forget to sneer a few more sentences. "Ah ha ha, thanks for the praise. You really came alone, huh? You're so confident." Finally, Guang Ho added a sentence, "You are indeed a legendary hunter." What a difference. This sentence of his caused his heart to miss a beat. The shock and panic were clearly visible on his face. The next moment, Pilsung's eyebrows furrowed. His face clearly displayed the two words displeased. He bluntly countered him. "It seems you already know who I am, huh?" Guang Ho's spine-chilling laughter echoed in the space again. He spread his arms wide, and a purple energy source emanated around him, which didn't look very good. "Of course. Otherwise, why would I go to the trouble of calling a Class B hunter to meet me privately?" The image of his old age superimposed on the youthful face of the present youth. Although they differed greatly in age, the sharp eyes and the aura he exuded couldn't be mistaken. Guang Ho thought and sighed. "When I found out, I was also surprised. Who would have thought that an 80-year-old man could turn into a kid like this?" Then, he kindly reminded him with a sentence, after the bewilderment of one problem after another. "And it's not just me, it seems that the organizers have also discovered your identity." The desire for conquest was once again boiling in Guang Ho's mind. The arrogance of a superior emanated from him. "I heard you were very talented, to the point where, if you want to, becoming the chairman of the hunter organization is as easy as turning your hand." Pilsung listened to Guang Ho's every word in silence. A cold feeling enveloped his entire body. He continued, "But perhaps that's why they find you annoying, really." Guang Ho put one hand forward. The annoying smirk didn't disappear even a little. He revealed some things about his mission this time. "Not long ago, the organization sent someone to meet me privately and ordered me to eliminate you, all for a Class B hunter." Finally, Guang Ho put his hand in front of Pilsung's face, calmly explaining why he knew the truth behind it. "So, I was half believing, and then I began to investigate and found out your identity." Pilsung, after hearing a long, drawn-out speech from start to finish, lost his patience and summarized it in one sentence. He asked back, "So, in short, this is all a conspiracy to eliminate me, right?" With a swoosh, his arm again reached forward, pointing directly at Pilsung in his bewilderment. The light shining down on his face, whether intentional or not, made his face even more frightening. It was not difficult to recognize the evil purpose in his invitation. "Or shall we cooperate?" Pilsung was stunned and asked back, as if he didn't believe what he had just heard. "What?" Guang Ho calmly explained to Pilsung bit by bit, "Actually, my relationship with the organization isn't very good either. I'm still being restricted because they're always getting in my way." After explaining everything clearly for him to understand, Guang Ho once again made an offer to him. "So let's form an alliance and plan to deal with them." Pilsung, after hearing this, directly responded to him. That will easily cause some things that I won't be happy about. Killing intent filled the air. It all emanated from him. Pilsung issued a warning. One of them is that because of me, the people around will be harmed. Realizing that he had just made a mistake, Guangho immediately expressed his apology, and at the same time, didn't forget to justify his actions. Come on, I'm very sorry for kidnapping that girl. But we both have a common enemy, the organization. Pilsung raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't hesitate to expose Guangho's plan with a tone full of dissatisfaction. Yeah, I guessed from the beginning that I would refuse, right? Kidnapping a hostage is just to buy time. Guangho, knowing that he had been exposed, didn't bother to hide it. He praised him, but it sounded sarcastic. Ah, you're old, but you're still perceptive, huh? Pilsung, confirming his thoughts, couldn't help but mock a few sentences. Shokchen wasn't wrong. You're all a bunch of useless people. Guangho, instead of getting angry, laughed even more. Don't say that. I really want to shake hands with you. Suddenly, he raised his hand and waved something. Guangho. Oh, one sound. He suddenly remembered something interesting. That's right. I have prepared a small gift for you. A foot stepped out from the crowd. Pilsung, as soon as he saw the person clearly, widened his eyes, clearly very surprised. Yangwan, holding a knife, stood behind Guangho. The young man looked relatively shy. Pilsung couldn't help but be shocked in his heart and asked back, Zhangwan? Guangho was very satisfied with his reaction. His chuckle rang out again. Aha, he explained the young man's appearance here. Actually, this guy is my underling. Pilsung stared directly at him. The anger at being betrayed was completely undisguised. Yangwan, as if startled, glanced in another direction. He looked extremely cowardly. Guangho also poured oil on the fire. How is it? Are you surprised by this gift? His eyes flashed with a look of triumph. The self-satisfaction was clearly present. Isn't it better to obey? Because I don't want to lay a hand on that girl either. At this moment, Pilsung spoke, in a tone carrying extreme anger. The tree wants to be still, but the wind doesn't stop. He clenched one side of his wrist, slowly activating his muscles. A thin, red energy enveloped his entire body. His low voice rang out. I have to give you guys a lesson you'll never forget. Pilsung furrowed his eyebrows tightly. He shouted angrily, like a warning to the crowd, get ready. Pilsung firmly gripped the sword in his hand. Guangho, seeing his uncooperative attitude, clenched his fists in frustration. He quickly regained his composure, a mocking look on his face. Guangho asked with a mocking tone, so, what are you going to do to me? He didn't forget to threaten. If you want to save that girl, be smart and drop the weapon you're holding. Pilsung's face became ice cold. He stared intently at Zhangwan's despicable eyes, his heart filled with calculations. With a clang, the sword was dropped by Pilsung. The sound of metal clashing against the ground echoed loudly. Pilsung nonchalantly asked, is that enough? He asked him with an attitude not very calm. The anger was easily heard from it. Guangho's smile stretched to his ears. He chuckled, satisfied with his helplessness. Good, you should be obedient like that. Guangho took steps closer to him. As he walked, he reassured him, appearing to be a kind and generous person. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Suddenly, he clenched his fist and swung a punch toward his face. Guangho's expression looked extremely fierce. He shouted, but of course, don't expect your body to have any place left that isn't injured. Just as his fist got close to him, Pilsung's eyes widened, unintentionally creating an invisible pressure. Pilsung reacted very quickly. Immediately he kneed. A single blow struck Guangho's face. The sudden pain shocked him momentarily. His eyes rolled back, and his throat emitted a groan of pain. Not allowing the opponent time to recover, Pilsung's entire body felt light. He jumped and spun in mid-air, preparing for a follow-up attack. At the right height, Pilsung immediately kicked, a kick straight into Guangho's stomach. Guangho's body, due to the previous blow, was knocked back. Guangho flew back a few meters. His entire body collided with the pile of things behind him. Dust and smoke flew everywhere, obscuring his entire view. He was not a weak person either, receiving a blow from Pilsung, but not passing out. Guangho sat down on the ground. He raised his hand to hold the place he was just kicked. His throat emitted a groan, both dissatisfied and in pain. Guangho's face turned green from pain. He exhaled a cold breath, trying his best to regain his composure, and threatened him, do you think I'm joking? You're not afraid of something happening to the girl over there? Pilsung glanced at him. Using the attitude of a superior looking down, he said sarcastically, truly disappointing. A Class B hunter, using a hostage to threaten his opponent. His face became noticeably pale. He didn't seem to care about his clear sarcasm. I'm sorry, but I'm not a kind person. Then, he turned to Zhangwan, who was standing nearby, and shouted angrily, Li Zhangwan, he roared, ordering, chop off that bitch's arm as an example for this old guy. Receiving the brutal order from Guangho, His hands involuntarily trembled with fear. Yangwan stared intently at the short dagger in his hand and contemplated. Cough, he furrowed his brow, his eyes closed tightly. Yangwan's whole body trembled with fear. Seeing this reaction from Zhongwan, Guangho was angry to the point of rolling his eyes. He glanced at him. The anger mixed with worry was clearly visible on his face. Suddenly, he yelled, pulling Zhongwan's mind out of his terrified stupor. "What are you still doing there, idiot?" His hand clenched the handle of the knife, his whole body visibly trembling. The soft sound of escaped, as if releasing a part of his anxiety. Yangwan walked in front of Jihan. He held the knife with both hands, using all his strength to swing it over his head, his expression full of worry. Suddenly, Pilsung spoke, calling out Zhongwan. This calm and reassuring call made him suddenly freeze. In contrast to his worried appearance, Pilsung seemed to be indifferent. He was strangely calm. He looked straight at him and quietly reminded him, "Think carefully. Why did you want to become a hunter?" Pilsung also carefully added a sentence. "Is the current image what you want?" This sentence made Zhongwan freeze. He looked back at his current situation. What he was about to do was extremely despicable. Yangwan remembered the time before, when he dreamed of a life as a hunter. Is the current image what he wanted? Then Zhongwan looked at his own miserable situation. He stammered, Guangho was getting more and more impatient. He frowned. He angrily shouted at Zhongwan, "What are you waiting for? Cut it!" His body remained still in one place. His two hands holding the knife trembled slightly. The sound of barely escaped. He stared for a long time, and finally decided to close his eyes tightly. With a clang, the knife in his hand was dropped, right at his feet. Yangwan stammered, "I'm sorry." Guangho saw this and frowned. He gnashed his teeth, the anger about to erupt. Guangho growled each word, "You traitorous dog." With a whoosh, Guangho stood up and rushed towards Zhongwan. "Get out!" Just as Guangho was rushing in like a gust of wind, he suddenly felt a killing intent behind him. Since when? Pilsung had jumped into the air. He was in a position to deliver a strong blow. Boom! Pilsung quickly landed. His foot stepped directly on Guangho's face, causing dust and smoke to fly everywhere. Taking advantage of the inertia of his entire body, he pressed Guangho's head under his foot, close to the cold ground. Guangho cried out "aha" before he could realize his situation. The scene of Pilsung openly crushing Guangho under his foot caused the underlings around to turn pale. One of them stammered, "Chairman." Guangho, being humiliated in front of the underlings, got even angrier. He glanced at Pilsung above him and growled each heavy word, "Humph, you bastard." Suddenly, he shouted. Guangho surrendered but used an extremely haughty attitude. "Okay, you win. I surrender." He added a condition when he won. "You want money or anything? I'm willing to give it all. Just stop." Hearing him say a whole lot of words full of an arrogant attitude, Pilsung couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. He frowned, looked down at him with contempt. Guangho seemed not to realize his bad expression, and said, "I didn't intend to kill you anyway." Pilsung was too lazy to patiently listen to Guangho's nonsense. He picked up the sword that had just been dropped on the ground. The feeling of pressure weighed down on the air around them. Pilsung coldly replied to him, "It's useless now, even if you advise me not to do bad things." One of his feet stepped on the guy. One hand held a long sword pointing straight at Guangho. Pilsung's eyes were red with killing intent. It was as if he was the embodiment of a cruel executioner. "If I can't talk it through, then I have to let you experience it directly with your body." Realizing that Pilsung had no intention of letting him off easily, Guangho panicked and shouted, "Hey, I already admitted my mistake, you know. Do I really have to go this far?" Seeing him shout like that, the underlings were also terrified. Their faces were pale, as if they couldn't believe that he really dared to do so. Pilsung raised the sword in his hand, preparing to stab down. The air around him seemed to be dyed red with blood. Guangho below still kept shouting in a shrill voice, "I also said I had no intention of killing you." The sword got closer and closer. He was afraid and started to speak nonsense, gradually becoming a pleading gesture. Pilsung heard those words, still maintaining an attitude of killing intent. "I won't resist you anymore. Please spare me." The sword quickly descended. The vision gradually became blurred. He was afraid and could only shout two words. "No. No." Pop! The sword was stabbed straight into the solid ground, just a little way from Guangho's face. He was scared to the point of pale face. Sweat was pouring down because he had just escaped death. Because he was too scared, Guangho fainted right after he pulled out the sword stuck in the stone. Pilsung glanced at his cowardly appearance and was disgusted. He softly hummed. He carried the sword on his shoulder, retracted his foot that was still placed on Guangho's body. Pilsung glanced at the crowd of underlings who followed him. He asked, "So? Does anyone else want to try?" The underlings, seeing themselves being singled out, jumped in fright. They all tried to avoid him. Some scratched their heads. Some deliberately looked away. Each one tried to reduce their own presence. Pilsung, seeing this, couldn't help but ponder. He sighed, and finally let out a contemptuous sentence, "A bunch of pathetic people." Pilsung dropped the sword. He ordered the people standing around just now, "If no one wants to try anymore, then quickly clean up this place." Those people, being spared, were flustered. Yes, yes. They were very obedient, very compliant. Yangwan lowered his head. He didn't dare to look directly at him. His heart was filled with his own thoughts. When he looked up, Jongwon was startled by the fact that Pilsung was standing right in front of him with a very normal face. He quickly bowed his head. His eyes showed a look of embarrassment and guilt. "Master," he immediately corrected himself. No, Hunter Guok Pilsung. I apologize for deceiving you all this time." Pilsung, after hearing that, just stared at him. This look of his unintentionally created an invisible pressure on Jongwon. Suddenly, he raised his hand and made a fist right above Jongwon's head, causing him to be extremely panicked. However, he didn't avoid it, just quickly closed his eyes tightly in a tense state. Pilsung, witnessing this reaction, just smiled and sighed. He put his hand on his shoulder and patted it a few times to reassure him. "This kid, you have to call me master." Yangwan was very surprised. He hesitantly asked again. The hesitant and fearful look had not disappeared. "You agree to forgive me? I lied and even pushed you into a trap." Pilsung didn't take this issue seriously. He just calmly replied to him, as if this was a very normal problem. "Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. But if you have recognized your mistake and know how to reflect on yourself, then there is no need to pursue it further." Then he raised his head slightly. His eyes were a little probing. And he asked Jongwon again, who was bewildered with certainty. "You said your dream was to live a wonderful life like the main character in the story, right?" He smiled faintly, a gentle smile that gave people a sense of security. "The main characters in the stories that I read." Pilsung stood opposite him. The surroundings seemed to radiate a shimmering light, even though it was night. He added, "After overcoming adversity, they will grow stronger." He turned around, a smile clearly on his face. Pilsung calmly shared his assessment of himself as well as words of encouragement to this young man. "I believe you will be like that, because the hunter Yangwan that I know is a person like that." His words made Jongwon want to cry in emotion. He stammered out the two words, "Master," hesitantly. Then, he quickly left first. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind Jongwon, "Well, hurry and take Jihan back." He received the order and quickly replied, "Yes, I will do it right away." When Pilsung disappeared, Jongwon was still standing there looking, his eyes full of gratitude and respect. The scene once again shifted to another place. Yang Hoon's face was extremely helpless. He spoke, asking, "Why did you suddenly call me out here?" Facing him was none other than Pilsung. He put his hand in his ear and wiggled it. He looked extremely lazy. He asked him back in a somewhat arrogant manner, "You have to have something before you call, right? Why, are you not satisfied?" Yang Hoon, after hearing this, sighed full of helplessness. Not necessarily dissatisfied. He hesitated. "It's just, the location." The image of a tall building appeared right next to where he were talking. Yang Hoon continued to ask, "Why is it in front of the Grizzly Society's headquarters?" The scene shifted inside the guild headquarters. Pilsung's footsteps were resolute. Seeing Pilsung's arrogant attitude, Yang Hoon could only stare blankly. His eyes were difficult to speak of. A group of people dressed neatly stood on both sides, leaving a path in the middle for him to walk through. They shouted in unison, "Welcome, sir." Yang Hoon followed behind him, his appearance both worried and submissive, a complete contrast to Pilsung's calm attitude. Yang Hoon carefully glanced at the attitudes of the people around him, thinking in his heart, "What's going on? Why would Seo Guangho's subordinates bow down like that?" A doubt suddenly flashed in his mind. Could it be? He cautiously called out, "Hey!" Pilsung, hearing Yang Hoon call, stopped and turned his head. He softly replied, "Hmm?" Yang Hoon hesitated for a moment and finally spoke, asking, "Are you planning to join the Grizzly Guild?" Pilsung was slightly startled. He sighed in exasperation. How could that be? He asked him back, "Why would I join a guild like this?" He understood his questioning attitude but didn't pay much attention. Pilsung turned around and continued walking forward in front of Yang Hoon's bewilderment. "Don't say too much, just follow me first." His gaze gradually changed into an understanding one. He was slightly darkened. He thought in his head, "I think I understand what's going on now." With a loud crash, Pilsung swung his leg hard. The door immediately burst open. He charged in with no hesitation. Behind him was Yang Hoon with a face full of worry. Pilsung shouted loudly, "Hey, I'm here!" On the opposite side from where Pilsung stood was a row of tables and chairs used for receiving guests. A vague figure was hiding behind the desk. The person shouted in fear, "Ah!" Only the top of the person's head was visible above the desk. The person kept muttering something in his mouth. The surrounding atmosphere had a relatively gloomy shade. Pilsung looked at it and felt disgusted. Green veins popped up on his face. He shouted loudly, "You bastard, come out here." Immediately, the person suddenly stood up from under the desk. It was Guangho. He stammered in reply, "Yes, yes." Pilsung, seeing this scene, was frustrated and sighed. Behind him, Yang Hun was not as calm as that. He looked at the guy in amazement, his face pale. He stammered, "Say." Guangho at this moment was using both hands to cover his head. His whole face was green with extreme fear. His huge body was trembling in waves. It looked completely cowardly, completely the opposite of his arrogant appearance before. Guangho muttered small sentences in his mouth. "I was wrong, please forgive me. I won't do bad things again." Yang Hun looked closely for a while, and then dared to call out his name directly in a tone that was still a little doubtful, "Seo Guangho." His whole face darkened. The confusion mixed with fear consumed his mind. Yang Hun carefully thought, although he's the lowest-ranked person, he's still a Class S hunter, after all. Then he glanced at the young man standing beside him with a rough attitude. Yang Hun thought to himself, "Seo Guangho, a person known for being rude, what happened to him that he became like this?" Pilsung didn't think much. He sighed, the contempt evident in his words. A failure. Such a big person and sitting crouched in the corner like that. Yang Hun couldn't resist his curiosity. He spoke to him with a somewhat cautious tone. "What happened between you and Seo Guangho?" Guangho, at this moment, was still crouching behind the desk. He clenched his hands, his whole body trembling. Pilsung calmly answered his question. "I just taught him a lesson for not fulfilling his responsibilities." Who knew the situation would get so bad? After that, he carefully added, "So, it seems that he won't be able to manage the guild anymore." Yang Hun glanced at Guangho's miserable appearance and couldn't help but agree. Perhaps, that's really the case. In his heart, he was silently blaming him. "I already warned you." Pilsung turned around to face Yang Hun. "You said you would do everything to develop the guild, right?" This sudden question momentarily froze him. Pilsung quickly stated his main purpose today. His face blossomed into a smile. "So I have a proposal for you." Pilsung looked straight into his eyes. He opened his mouth. "Let's buy the Grizzly Guild." Yang Hun's bewildered expression became even more apparent on his face. He stammered and asked again uncertainly, "What? The Grizzly Guild?" His bewildered expression already clearly showed his confusion at this moment. Pilsung put his hands in his pockets, starting to explain more about why he suggested it. "Although it doesn't look like much, at least it's a guild in the top 10. Buying it can definitely help develop the guild." Before his crazy proposal, Yang Hun widened his eyes. He hesitated and asked again, "But, our Aurora Guild is ranked 11. Taking over the Grizzly Guild, a higher-ranked guild, is impossible." Pilsung scornfully raised his eyebrows. He sighed in frustration. Ridiculous. A person who once tried to force others to join a guild, and is still worried about that? Yang Hun was reminded of the shameful things of his own, so he became flustered. That. Then Pilsung turned his head again and looked at Guangho, who had been sitting still behind the desk. He folded his arms and asked him, "How about it? Do you also think this is a problem?" Guangho, seeing himself being mentioned, became flustered. He hurriedly raised his hands in front of him unconsciously. His eyebrows furrowed. Sweat dripped like a stream. "No, no, I'm very willing to cede the guild." He also carefully added, "If necessary, I will even give up being a hunter." Before Guangho's somewhat exaggerated reaction, Pilsung sighed in frustration. "If you give up, who will fill the position of a Class S hunter in the guild?" Hearing that, Guangho quickly corrected himself. His voice was clearly weak. "I'm sorry, then I will continue to be a hunter." Yang Hun, standing on the side, witnessed the entire conversation between the two. He was disgusted. He glanced at Guangho, who was cautiously submissive, and thought to himself, "Seo Guangho looks so miserable." Pilsung was too lazy to pay attention to him. He pointed at Guangho, gesturing to him, and then added, "You heard that, right? He has no opinion. What do you think?" Yang Hun was still a little skeptical. He asked him again, "Why did you make this suggestion to me?" Pilsung lowered his head. It was difficult to see his current expression. His low voice sounded, giving people a feeling of slight pressure. "I already said it. I want to create a force to oppose the association." Pilsung smiled with great confidence. His two hands raised, gathering a white-blue energy around him, "And I want to start by merging Aurora and Grizzly. Then, I will make it the strongest guild." Yang Hun widened his eyes. It seemed he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He spoke again. "The guild? The strongest?" The space around the room was gradually enveloped by the energy he emitted. Pilsung affirmed firmly, "Yes, the guild that I want to create." After thinking for a moment, Yang Hun looked at Pilsung with an expression that was both panicked and slightly resentful. "So, you want me to become your henchman?" He heard this and sneered. "A henchman?" Pilsung asked him back. I'll just need your help in the future. Young-hoon understood his purpose and also released some of his worries. He darkened his face, thinking to himself, it's sudden, but it's not a bad proposal. After some hesitation, Young-hoon finally made a decision. Okay. He clasped his hands behind his back. His face still showed a little worry. I will carry out the merger in the most natural way possible. Pilsung, after hearing his assurance, smiled brightly. Great, he exclaimed. Thanks to you. With a crash, the closed door of the office room was burst open. Someone rushed in. He was panting as if he had just run here in a hurry. Something big happened. The person's face was pale. He quickly reported, someone from the association wants to see the guildmaster. All three people, including Gwang-ho who was standing behind the desk, Pilsung spoke again. The association? The door was pushed open, producing a creaking sound. The person who came brought with him an ominous purple energy. Obviously, it didn't have many good intentions. He wore thick glasses, his smile raised high. Aha, are you well? A man in a neat suit and square glasses entered. He gave people a feeling of extreme danger. I apologize for being so abrupt to come here like this. He was the leader of the powerful hunter crime team, Yoon Dog-yoon. Gwang-ho's face darkened slightly. It was difficult to see his expression. He calmly replied, I'm fine. Gwang-ho sat on the desk, his arrogant demeanor as if the submissiveness he showed when facing Pilsung wasn't him. Gwang-ho lost his patience and asked him, what do you want to discuss to come here all of a sudden? The expression on his face was a little stiff, both difficult to say and worried. Going back to a few minutes before that, Pilsung stood with his arms crossed in front of him. Beside him were Young-hoon and Gwang-ho who were submissive. He calmly reminded him, listen, we'll be in another room. You meet him first and see what he came for. He heard this and cautiously replied, yes. Pilsung was still a little uneasy. He raised two fingers, pointing back and forth between his eyes and him. Remember not to do anything that would make them suspicious. I'm still watching you, Gwang-ho hastily replied, sweat pouring down like a stream. Yes, I understand. At present, Gwang-ho struggled to maintain his arrogant appearance. He carefully asked, do you have something to discuss? Dog-yoon only smiled slightly. He raised one finger, still the face with a professional smile. I'm just curious to see how the work is progressing. The superiors are very concerned about this. Gwang-ho, after hearing this, sighed as if he had been relieved of a burden. Ha! That's all? I already have a plan to solve it properly. His face was a little irritable. Gwang-ho looked directly into Dog-yoon's eyes. The impatience was clearly evident. Why does the association care about him so much, so hastily? Is it because someone has offended the association? Hearing Gwang-ho's probing question, Dog-yoon smiled dangerously. He spoke, Hunter Seo Gwang-ho. Dog-yoon raised his hand and pushed up his glasses. He smiled and reminded, we are not obligated to reveal those things to you. Gwang-ho's face began to gradually darken according to his words. Dog-yoon didn't stop there. He also said more about his obligations. Your job is to complete the task that we have assigned. If you want your guild to still have a place in the hunter world. Gwang-ho, after hearing this, clearly expressed anger in his eyes. Are you threatening Seo Gwang-ho? Dog-yoon was also too lazy to talk to someone who was used to being arrogant like Gwang-ho. He just smiled in reply. Ha ha, threatening? It's just work, work only. Finally, he sighed. Dog-yoon turned around. He put one hand in his pocket and left. It seems you have understood the problem. Then, I will take my leave. Before leaving, he didn't forget to turn back and smile sarcastically at Gwang-ho. I hope to hear good news from you soon. Gwang-ho watched his back as he left. He gritted his teeth and cursed, damn bastard. Just then, Pilsung opened the door to the room next door and came out. He asked in a low voice, is he gone? Gwang-ho at this moment returned to his cowardly and timid appearance. Yes, he is. He came out. Behind him was Young-hoon following. Pilsung complimented him. You did a good job. The acting was better than I thought. Gwang-ho, hearing this, shyly rubbed his head, thank you. The next second, Pilsung immediately turned his face. He turned into a wicked person. A blue-white energy emanated around him. He smiled slyly, causing Gwang-ho, who was standing opposite, to change his expression immediately. Do you have any other intentions in mind? Are you planning to betray me and hand me over to them in the future? Gwang-ho, hearing this, shook his head frantically. No, no way. I wouldn't dare. Pilsung, seeing this, sighed. He said softly, I was just joking. And you made a big deal out of it. He propped his chin, thinking. Beside him was the big guy Seo, who was crouching down as much as possible, and Young-hoon, who was staring blankly. But the association's method is really despicable, he spoke up. They think that it would be beneficial to them if either of you died. What if we use their own tricks? Thinking about this, his eyes suddenly flashed with undisguised disgust. Pilsung thought to himself, the Hunter Association was originally an organization that protected the rights of hunters. but now it has become a place that is willing to kill people for its own benefit. The infinite contempt was clearly visible on his face. Young-hoon, standing on the side, had been observing the two people just now. He himself also felt a little pensive. He was calculating in his head, who is this kid that the association wants to eliminate? The unspeakable look in his eyes became increasingly obvious. Suddenly, Pilsung spoke, cutting off everyone's train of thought. All right, he lowered his face. Standing against the light, it was difficult to see his current expression. We can't sit still and let them get past us like this. With a thump, Pilsung clasped his hands together. A hard-to-describe, arrogant smile appeared on his face. It's time to give them a lesson they'll never forget, right? The bustling cityscape of a prominent city came into view. Inside, two people sat facing each other, with a tense atmosphere hanging between them. Pilsung looked at the person opposite him and asked, I heard you quit being a hunter. Youngwon, embarrassed, didn't look directly at him and answered, lowering his head, I've thought a lot, and realized that being a hunter isn't a profession that suits me. He asked curiously, so, what are you planning to do next? He scratched his head hesitantly. Actually, in a tall building where the hunter facilities were housed, the two hands of a man trembled, clinging to each other. Youngwon's whole body trembled no less. He sat on the chair, his face lowered, filled with contemplation. Another man approached and reassured him, don't worry, we'll guarantee your complete anonymity. He gave a firm smile and then continued, don't be too tense because of the cameras, just talk freely. The man waved his hand, reminding Jongwon, just answer the questions well, and we'll handle the rest. He still felt a little scared, but answered, yes. An announcement boomed, increasing his fear. The filming is about to begin. The host sitting next to Jongwon sent a greeting to open, hello, audience, the special event program is about to begin. He looked directly into the camera to continue. Recently, many people have joined the hunter world, right? Not long ago, we received news that some guilds were involved with various crimes. The host glanced at Jongwon. Today, we have invited a whistleblower to the program. He heard it was his turn, and his voice became dry, hard to speak. Jongwon had been given a red mask to cover his face, but that still didn't stop his anxiety. Hello, the host asked questions to interview him. The whistleblower used to be a member of a famous guild in the country, is that correct? He stammered to answer, yes. The host's smile became devious and asked, can you tell us specifically what crimes your guild committed? Youngwon sweated profusely answering his questions with a shaky cold that ran down his spine. Our guildmaster is a person who often uses violence against civilians. In addition, the unfair slavery contracts and the guild's power abuse also occur frequently. He was continuing, when the sound outside the filming location crashed loudly, making the whole team freeze. And recently they also cooperated with the Hunter Association. The people next to the machinery were asking each other in surprise, what's that? The other person immediately stood up and replied, let me go out and check for a moment. He approached the door, which was being repeatedly kicked by some force. Standing in front of the door, the person wondered, what's going on? As soon as he finished speaking, Guangho outside furiously kicked the door open and rushed in. His whole body exuded a dangerous black aura. He cracked his fingers and growled, you rats, dare to secretly film without telling me? The person in charge of the sound, sweating and confused, asked again, what are you talking about? Guangho glared at him and shouted, who are you? He was about to threaten, but before he could finish, he was grabbed by the collar. We're broadcasting. If you cause a ruckus here, then. Guangho pressed his face close to the person in charge of the sound and asked, making him scared, do I look scary? Do you know who I am that you dare do this? His face became terrifying and ordered, if you don't want to die, bring that rat that is hiding there out here for me immediately. His whole body trembled and panicked. Who? Guangho released his collar and stood with his hands on his hips. Who else? That guy who came here to expose us. The person in charge of the sound avoided his gaze and looked elsewhere. I don't understand what you mean. Guangho pushed the person in charge of the sound aside and moved forward. Over here, right? He rushed into the room in front and called out loudly, Li Zhongwan. The scene inside, without a soul, surprised him. What? Why isn't anyone here? Guangho entered the room, looking around everywhere and shouting, where did you all run off to? He clenched his fists in anger and roared, come out here, you traitor. I will kill you. A voice came from behind him. That's far enough. The footsteps of that person got closer and closer to him. I didn't expect to meet you here. Seo Guangho. A man in a suit pushed up his glasses and stood in front of the door. Guangho thoughtfully looked at the person in front of him. Suddenly, he didn't know when he was surrounded by a group of people. He frowned and asked coldly, what? You want to cause trouble with me? The man pushed up his glasses, puzzled. Have you forgotten that we are the Hunters Criminal Task Force? We received a report about a hunter causing a disturbance at the television station. I didn't expect it to be you. Guang Ho, without any hesitation, stated his purpose frankly. I was just backstabbed by a subordinate. He went out and spoke ill of my wrongdoings. I just intended to teach him a lesson. The glasses man frowned and asked in a cold voice, but what do you think about causing such a disturbance? Do you think we'll naturally leave you alone? He raised his hand slightly and looked at the person opposite. He spoke, he knows everything that I and you have traded. He heard those words and frowned, speaking in a low voice, you don't do your job well at all, and you're a disappointment. Guang Ho angrily gritted his teeth. Shut up, you useless person, you're only good at pushing the busy work on me. The man with glasses turned his head, exhaled, and said, there's no way. He stopped and called out from behind, we have to change our priorities, and we must find that person. An underling raised a sword and asked, what if we find him? The man with glasses became terrifying and growled each word, leave no room for future troubles. He raised his hand to his forehead and decisively ordered, eliminate him immediately for me. Suddenly, a sound from behind caused the whole group to jump and look back. The man pointed to that spot and shouted loudly, he's trying to run away, chase after him. Guang Ho frantically rushed forward, to the surprise of many people. Get out of the way, I'll catch and kill that bastard myself. He stood hesitantly for a moment and shouted, what are you still doing there? Chase after them. The subordinates were flustered and moved forward. Yes, yes. The man with glasses angrily frowned and cursed, damn it. The sound of heavy breathing echoed in a quiet room. Yang Wan hid behind a small cabinet, tiredly looking out the door, gasping for air. He was scared, breathing heavily, muttering in his mouth, did I cut him off? Where is Master now? Yang Wan widened his eyes, remembering the time in the cafe with Pilsung. His head flashed back to when he asked, so, what are you planning to do next? Yang Wan scratched his head, lowered his head and replied hesitatingly, actually, I'm looking for another job, but because I wasted too much time being a hunter, it's a bit difficult now to find one. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. He stammered, I've disappointed Master, right? Yang Wan sweated profusely and waved his hand, awkwardly asking, I've been talking about myself too much just now, haven't I? Why did Master come to see me today? Pilsung folded his arms, looked at him seriously and spoke, actually, I have something I need you to help me with. He repeated in disbelief, something? What? Back to reality, Jiang Wan silently prayed for his master to come quickly. I've done what Master told me. What should I do now, Master? Please come quickly. He didn't know when a person had appeared behind him, raising a sword high. He didn't know, muttering, I can't hold on for much longer on my own. A feeling of unease rose. Jiang Wan turned around and saw the sharp sword, his face turning pale. The sound of metal echoed in the closed room. Pilsung appeared, holding a sword, blocking the sword that was attacking Jiang Wan. He saw him and became lighter and called out, Master. He complimented him, you did well. Pilsung stood in front of Jiang Wan, holding the sword in his hand and smirking towards the front, reassuring him. I'm here, don't worry anymore. The filming hall appeared. Guang Ho walked around, calling out loudly, Li Jiangwan, where are you hiding? The glasses-wearing man, with sweat dripping down his face, loudly asked, did that guy really go this way? He went looking for Jiangwan and didn't find him, mumbling to himself, wow, it's strange, he clearly went this way. He angrily gritted his teeth, I don't know what kind of scheme you have, but I don't have time to play with you. Guang Ho turned around, smirked, and said, what's the big deal? Everyone makes mistakes. The glasses-wearing man angrily turned and left, shouting back, damn it, a complete waste of time, everyone, get out. Suddenly, a throne camera blocked his way, scaring him. The glasses-wearing man turned pale, glaring at Guang Ho and asking in a harsh tone, what do you mean by this? He laughed loudly and growled each word, sorry, but I can't let you guys leave so easily. Remembering Pilsung's voice calling out the request, find a way to attract their attention, Guang Ho trembled and pointed to himself, me? He looked directly at him with a threatening face. What? He waved his hand, sweating profusely, and said in a flustered tone, not wanting to? No way. Guang Ho's face turned pale. In his head, he screamed, damn it, Co Guang Ho, me, falling into this situation. If only I had listened to Go Young Hoon back then. Back in reality, the glasses-wearing man turned to him and said, if that's the case, we will turn against the association in the future. Can you handle it? Guang Ho looked at his subordinates and spoke, sorry, there's someone I don't want to face more than the association. The glasses-wearing man pushed up his glasses, his eyes sharp. Come on, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I was planning to get rid of you early on. He frowned in rage. These days, every bastard likes to look down on me. Guang Ho's face darkened, glaring at the person in front of him. I'm telling you, I didn't like you from the start. The glasses-wearing man was just as fierce, glaring at him. What a coincidence. I'm the same. His henchmen surrounded him with weapons. The glasses-wearing man shouted the order, "Attack!" As soon as his words finished, the others immediately rushed up to attack Guangho. He scornfully said, "Just a few of you, trying to stop Xiao Guangho?" Guangho stomped his foot down, causing the ground to shake. The rubble flew into the air, knocking his subordinates away. The glasses-wearing man smiled and said, "Oh, is that so?" A magical chain suddenly appeared, tightly wrapping around his body. Guangho's sweat poured out, glancing at the chain. He thought to himself, "What is this skill? Why can't I escape?" The glasses-wearing man stepped closer to him, his aura powerful, saying, "Do you know why I became the leader of the Hunter's violent crime team?" He turned his head, looking elsewhere, then touched his glasses, his voice cold. "Because I can use a binding skill so strong that even a Class S hunter can't escape." The glasses-wearing man looked at Guangho, who was tightly bound by the chain, and smirked. "The only weakness is that it's easy to dodge, but guys like you are too confident in their strength, so they don't think about dodging." He suddenly raised his hand and gestured. Each of his subordinates raised their hands towards him. Each chain tightened, as if it was burning Guangho. Guangho screamed in agony. He collapsed to the ground. The glasses-wearing man smirked and looked directly at Guangho. "Even the lion is the same. Overconfidence is killed by the hyena." He raised his hand towards the sword that the henchman was standing next to. The glasses-wearing man raised the sword high, wanting to attack Guangho. He mocked, "Let me help you finish this, okay?" Behind the glasses-wearing man, a figure appeared, rushing towards him and calling out, "It won't be that easy." Pilsung appeared, blade to blade with the glasses-wearing man. He jumped back to gain an advantage. The glasses-wearing man turned pale and gritted his teeth. "Hunter Guok Pilsung, why are you here?" Pilsung rested his sword on his neck and said arrogantly, "Why can't I be here?" As if understanding something, the glasses-wearing man frowned. "So that's it. Ao Guangho's betrayal was because of you?" He looked at their group and scornfully said, "The association is planning to eliminate me, right? Who gave the order?" The man was puzzled and pushed up his glasses. "Do I have to answer you?" The henchman behind him looked at his expression and asked, "Captain, what should we do?" The glasses-wearing man worried, thinking in his head, "Xiao Guangho can't fight anymore, but there's still a chance." He pointed at Pilsung and ordered, "Handle that guy now." The subordinates immediately took the command. "Yes." An underling spun a chain in the air and aimed at him. The subordinate directly threw the weapon to attack Pilsung. He dodged it without any fear and grabbed the chain. The subordinate was surprised and opened his mouth wide. Pilsung grabbed the chain, making the subordinate fly up high. He raised his leg and kicked him straight in the face with a painful blow. The glasses-wearing man was a little panicked, looking at his subordinate, who was lying under Pilsung's feet. He shouted, "Don't be overconfident. And, he's on par with a Class S hunter." At the same time, all the subordinates charged towards him. Pilsung scornfully shouted, "A bunch of idiots." He rushed in to attack each one, not giving them a chance to react. They all fell to the ground, while he was still standing proudly without losing any strength. Feeling something unusual, Pilsung glanced to the side. A series of prominent chains wrapped tightly around him. Seeing that, the glasses-wearing man laughed, full of confidence. "You were overconfident, huh? Too bad, but you also have to disappear with Xiao Guangho." His voice echoed, "You don't think I'm on par with that bastard, do you?" He froze, surprised. "What?" Pilsung flexed, making each chain break and turn into sand. The glasses-wearing man couldn't believe it, backing away, stammering, "Impossible." He approached him and asked, frustrated, "Is there anything else?" He sweated profusely, panicking, "My skill is useless, huh?" Could his power be on par with the association chairman? The glasses-wearing man panicked and ran, thinking, "I can't handle this anymore, I must quickly report this to the association." Pilsung grabbed the chain in his hand and spun it repeatedly. "Where are you going?" He threw the weapon in front of his face, making him turn pale with fear. The glasses-wearing man fell to the ground, a critical blow. He lay on the ground, fearfully turning his head and asking, "What are you going to do to me? If you kill me, do you think the association will let you go?" Pilsung walked over to him and replied, "Why kill an important witness?" The glasses-wearing man was startled and stammered, "Witness?" He glanced at the figure in the distance, holding a phone and filming. "Are you filming this?" Yangwan held up his phone and said, "Of course. It's live streaming right now, and the number of viewers has already exceeded 2,000. The glasses-wearing man was horrified. "What?" Pilsung smirked and said, "Everything you've done from the beginning has been recorded. I just want to let everyone know how dirty the association is." He sweated profusely, thinking, "Damn it, this was a trap aimed at this." Yangwan walked over to him, struggling and scolding, "You bastard!" He angrily grabbed his arm, looking at him and shouting, "You dare to make me like this?" The glasses-wearing man, pale with fear, screamed, "You're not afraid of the association? You think you can get away with this? Yangwan rushed over and struck him in the head with a decisive blow. He glared at him and growled each word. I told you, there's someone I don't want to face more than the association. Yangwan ran down with the phone in his hand, stammering, Master, the people's reactions are very chaotic. Those who have been harmed by the association have also appeared to speak out. Pilsung looked at him and complimented him. Well done. He raised his hand and touched his hat, smiling in delight. Let's see how the association will react. The meeting hall of the Hunter Association came into view. This time, the case of Hunter Guok Pilsung was being discussed. The man standing in the meeting room continued his presentation. Recently, the conversation between Captain Yoon Dog-yoon of the Hunter Crime Team and Hunter Guok Pilsung was leaked on social media. First, we have deleted all related videos, and have also contacted the media and the police to handle the matter. In the end, we intend to conclude this case by blaming the personal behavior of Captain Yoon. The girl, looking bored, spoke up. This time, Captain Yoon caused a rather large problem. How should we handle it? She was a Class 5 hunter of the Hunter Association, Yu San-young. The man opposite her immediately folded his arms, objecting, Hunter Yu San-young, is it really Hunter Guok Pilsung? I've never heard of an 80-year-old man being able to become young again overnight. Before the words of objection, she just gave a confident smile and spoke, it's not yet clear what method he used, but it's not accurate. Hearing these words, the people next to them smiled and began to criticize. Who? How strange. I have seen many people with special abilities, but this is really an enviable ability. Yu San-young also didn't care about everything and agreed. That's right. But in her mind, she always had calculations. These old men have everything, and they still crave youth. Her eyes glanced at them. Is it that incredible? Then, suddenly, the person who was reporting was extremely shocked, interjecting, and we've confirmed that Seo Guangho is on Guok Pilsung's side. The men inside the meeting room were still stubbornly criticizing. That troublesome guy is truly useless. We should have dealt with him long ago. The man suddenly spoke. So, what's the reason for Hunter Guok Pilsung to hide his identity? If he causes trouble again like before, it will be tiring for us. The person presenting trembled and replied, we still don't know that, but we will try to find out as soon as possible. So he clicked his tongue and closed his eyes, speaking leisurely, TSK, I really don't understand. That guy has been silent for so long. Why did he suddenly cause trouble again? It must be because he became young again. So he's too energetic. Yu San-young suddenly put her hand to her lips and made a guess. Could it be? Her whole body stood straight, continuing. He's aiming for the position of the association chairman? At this moment, they turned to ask for the opinion of the man sitting at the end of the table. Chairman, is this true? Shouldn't we deal with him as soon as possible? What do you think about this? This person was the chairman of the Hunter Association, Class S Hunter Lim Taiwan. Ao Guangho lowered his head so his hair covered his calculating face and spoke. Now everyone's attention is focused on us. Act carefully. Just understand the intentions of that Hunter Guok Pilsung, and it's not too late to take action. Yu San-young also agreed, propping up her chin. That's right. Just follow the chairman's will. Who understands him better than you? The two of them used to be close teammates. Then, suddenly, a hearty laugh sounded. Ha ha, really. As soon as the laughter sounded, the face of the manager became cold. At the same time, Yu San-young, as well, coldly waited for what would happen next. The manager's eyes suddenly flashed a bloodthirsty light and glanced at the person who had just spoken. At Changchun Road, inside the office on that road, a voice suddenly sounded, the association intends to blame Captain Yoon Dog-yoon's personal behavior to end the matter. Guok Pilsung, hearing this, also spoke out, cursing, shameless. However, Go Yong-hoon continued to analyze, what if we reveal your identity now and recount the entire incident? But Guok Pilsung tried to let it go. Never mind, revealing the identity of a forgotten hunter. What difference will that make? Go Yong-hoon then believed that he was not just an ordinary hunter. He just sighed and spoke. The association has the power to manipulate the media. No matter who I say I am, they will have a way to make everything the same as it is now. Go Yong-hoon still hesitated to interject. But, sir, despite his attempts to interject, Guok Pilsung still folded his arms and judged, I also guess this move by the association. It's a pity, but we will have to wait for another opportunity. Go Yong-hoon's face showed a look of worry. I didn't know this big event would happen, and I didn't know anything. I really don't have the face to meet you. His next words immediately made him fall silent. I know you're busy, so just worrying about me is enough. I'm grateful for that. Then, suddenly, a person hesitated to the point of being respectful. Sir, the person tried to attract the attention of the two. I'm sorry for interrupting your conversation. A man with an angry look spoke. But why did you call us here? At this moment, Guok Pilsung just leaned back in his chair calmly, and replied, why, not satisfied? "There's something I need to say, so I called." The other person immediately jumped and said, "I have no opinion." Looking at the expression of the person, who was startled, Guok Pilsung made a guess in his heart. I vaguely guessed this wasn't an ordinary person. His mood was very sad at this time, continuing to think. But I didn't expect it to be the real Guok Pilsung. It turns out that's why Park Sho-chan treated him with respect. Suddenly, he sighed, full of frustration. Then he spoke out the desire of his own. "I once said I wanted to create a new force." Go Young-hoon, hearing that, was surprised and asked again, "What kind of force?" He then bowed his head and presented, "A place that can control the current association. Like a chain to bind those who are rampant in the association." Go Young-hoon's face was covered with sweat and a look of extreme worry. Indeed, only you could think like that. A place like a chain to bind the association. Guok Pilsung again made his predictions. If the association knows about this, they will try harder to prevent it, and if you openly confront the association, you will suffer great losses. I won't force you to help. If you want to withdraw, it's not too late now. Go Young-hoon's hand clung tightly to the table. He hesitated. Then, he calmly declared, 10 years ago and now, I have always followed you to the end. If you need anything, please tell me." Guok Pilsung just smiled and praised, as expected, "The person I trust." At the same time, a man in the room spoke up, reminding, "Sir, don't say you will create a new force." The other person spoke in a mournful tone. "So I was prepared. I also want to help you." The other person gritted his teeth and recounted, "I've been targeted by the association for a long time, so the more this happens, the more I will be pinned down. So I have to choose the right side." Go Young-hoon looked at them and wondered, "Have you made any plans for the next step?" Guok Pilsung hesitated and then spoke. First, his hand pointed straight at the people who were just discussing. His face showed a bit of arrogance. "I plan to use this guy for a while." The guy was a little surprised and asked, "Me?" The scene shifted to a remote rural area. At this moment, a teleportation gate suddenly appeared. The gate was still standing there. The village chief was smiling and waiting. Another man suddenly walked over and spoke. "Village chief, you should stay away from there. If the teleportation gate explodes, it will be very dangerous." The village chief still calmly looked at the gate and wondered. This teleportation gate has appeared in the village for more than a week, but why haven't any hunters come to handle it yet? The old man next to him just sighed with frustration. It's a low-level dungeon with little profit, and it's located in this remote village. No one wants to come. The village chief was also very tired of this situation and scolded, "Damn it." Suddenly, from behind, a person ran and shouted loudly, "Village chief, the hunters from Seoul have arrived." The village chief heard that and couldn't believe it. He asked himself, "The hunters have arrived?" At this moment, the man who was chosen to embody Guok Pilsung was angrily scolding. "Damn it, why do I have to do this?" He was at the back, continuously glancing and reminding. "I told you to show a friendly attitude." His words made him unable to do anything but obediently reply, "Yes." Then Guok Pilsung reminded, "Prepare as planned. What are you doing?" Cough. Immediately after, there were coughs that broke their atmosphere. Cough, cough. Although his outward attitude was very calm, his heart was screaming with helplessness. "Damn it, no matter how I think about it, I feel like I've chosen the wrong side." He calmly clenched his hand, and said out loud with Guok Pilsung's satisfaction, "Dear citizens, please rest assured, Class S Hunter Seo Guangho has arrived to protect your safety." The current situation of the village was now spreading rumors. "Have you heard the news?" "What news?" "I heard there's a Class S hunter who only hunts unprofitable dungeons and gets ignored." "What? Who would do such a thing?" "Do you know who that person is?" "It's Class S Hunter Seo Guangho." "That's so strange. Why is that hunter doing such a thing? What in the world is going on?" While everyone was still discussing, Seo Guangho used all his strength to shout, "Citizens, Seo Guangho will stand up to protect everyone's safety." At the same time, his inner self was still screaming, "Damn it, how long do I have to do this?" Suddenly, a man behind, holding a phone, ready for the cut editing, spoke, "Is that really a Class S hunter? Are you lying? What's a Class S hunter doing in this place?" This made Seo Guangho very angry, yelling, "You bastards!" Seeing the situation going in the wrong direction, Guok Pilsung immediately reminded, "Hey, I told you not to intimidate others." He turned and reminded, "Today, we will hunt a Class B dungeon." Then urged, "Hurry up now." Standing in front of the space gate, Guok Pilsung, with his hands on his hips, asked, "Well, is everyone ready?" Suddenly, a call sounded. "Master." A young man approached, scratching his head before the question, "Are you sure that you, a hunter only at Class C, can enter a Class B dungeon?" Go Young-hoon immediately spoke up and asked, "Hunter Kim Taijin?" Guok Pilsung replied with approval, "That's right, I plan to bring Taijin to join in clearing the dungeon." He casually lowered his eyes and continued, He's only a Class C hunter, but has great potential. If it's okay, I'll take Taijin with me to learn for a while. What do you think? Go Yonghoon calmly offered his hand towards Guok Pilsung and replied, "It's great to be taught by you. I'm sure Taijin will be very happy too." He approached Go Yonghoon's desk and said, "Okay, then I'll take Taijin with me." He could only entrust his trust. "Yes, it all depends on you." At this moment, the young man began to speak. "I was really surprised when the boss told me the news. But I don't know if I deserve to stand together with you two." Hearing these words, Seo Guangho was a bit angry, yelling, "If you keep complaining, I'm gonna leave you here right now." Immediately, Guok Pilsung poked directly into Seo Guangho's eyes and shouted, scolding, "Who allowed you to glare?" Ah! He still clutched his eyes while Guok Pilsung was warning, "If Taijin gets into trouble, you'll be in trouble with me, understood?" Cough. Kim Taijin suddenly perked up and wondered, "But why do we have to come all the way here to make a world?" At this moment, Seo Guangho realized and spoke up, "I'm also wondering about this. There are so many money-making dungeons. Why do we only go to places with no money?" Seeing this stupidity, Guok Pilsung was angry, yelling, "You bastard, I already told you, this is to improve your bad reputation." He thought that the bad reputation was still enough. The association still ignored it. "You have to try at least a little bit." Seo Guangho didn't know what to do but put his hand on his forehead and replied, You think that anyone will acknowledge that?" Guok Pilsung looked up at the sky and replied, "Because of what you have done, you definitely can't turn black and white right away, but at least, for those who don't receive help from anyone, we are still good people to them." Seo Guangho again hummed, thinking that he still had to suffer. Then he started to scatter everyone. "Okay, no more chatting." He kept urging them, "Let's start clearing the dungeon." Guok Pilsung still led the way, running straight into the space gate and calling out to the other two, "Let's go." Inside the dungeon, the trees and grass were covered in green. Everyone was walking slowly into the inside on the small dirt path. Suddenly, Seo Guangho looked up at the sky when he felt something unusual. A monkey appeared above his head. The monkey bared its teeth, wanting to swallow his whole body. Next, Seo Guangho quickly dodged to the side and took out his weapon, preparing to attack. The group of monkeys were startled and shouted loudly, making a loud noise throughout the area. After those cries ended, the bodies of the monkeys were all torn into pieces. Kim Taijin didn't dare to face this scene and closed his eyes tightly and remained silent. Suddenly, Guok Pilsung approached and spoke. "Why are you always in a daze?" Kim Taijin could only hesitate and reply, because, a Class S hunter is different." Guok Pilsung suddenly gave a smile and instructed, "Try to learn everything you can." Meanwhile, Seo Guangho was turning his face in anger at Guok Pilsung's words. "That guy is a bit stubborn, but his skills aren't bad." Seo Guangho was fighting the monkeys and shouting, "Don't say anything, come and help me out. Everything is done by me." Guok Pilsung immediately replied, "Why are you such a show-off?" Suddenly, Kim Taijin, getting chatty, said, "By the way, let me ask you a question. What's the relationship between you and Hunter Seo Guangho?" He was explaining and looking at him with an unstable attitude. "That guy made a big mistake with me, so he's being punished." "Made a mistake?" He replied, "That's right. I told him to show some good behavior and then I'll let him go." At that time, Seo Guangho was fighting. His heart was also cursing, "Damn it, how did my life end up like this?" A breath sounded. "Phew." Kim Taijin haughtily spoke up, "Class B monsters are really too much for me." Guok Pilsung also continued to support and praise. "But you did better than I expected. A Class B hunter can be like this. It's remarkable." The two of them praised each other in turn. "It's all because of your teaching." Seo Guangho, at this moment, began to grit his teeth and say in a loud voice, Look, why are you praising him just for handling a few monsters?" As soon as Guok Pilsung asked, "Why is he with Taijin?" "Of course he has to do it." Seo Guangho immediately hurried over and replied, Yes. From the deep forest, terrifying sounds emerged. A roar sounded, and with it, the shadow of a monkey came. Grrr. It opened its greedy mouth, sticking its tongue out in front of Guok Pilsung and roared. Guok Pilsung still calmly made a judgment. "Very good, the final boss has finally appeared." It fiercely rushed forward, roaring loudly again. It jumped onto a tall branch. From there, it jumped forward. Guok Pilsung glanced and ordered Seo Guangho, "Leave that to you." He didn't know what to do. He could only grit his teeth and scold, "It's too much, only telling people to do errands." As he rushed towards the monster, Seo Guangho was calculating, "I have to finish this quickly and run away. That monster is still roaring very loudly." Roar. It immediately threw a strong kick at him. He angrily shouted, "Annoying." Then, he endured with all his strength. Seo Guangho yelled, "Hiya!" A powerful slash fell. The beast couldn't bear the pain and could only roar loudly. Arg! You could only see Xiao Guangho's back, quickly flying towards it. He proudly declared, "Behave and go to see the king of hell." It continued to open its mouth and roar miserably. Arg! The next second, its entire body had been torn to pieces. After handling it, Xiao Guangho immediately landed and exhaled. Kim Taijin secretly observed the overall battle and thought to himself, so quick, this is the power of a Class S. Guok Pilsung looked at him and asked, how do you feel? What have you learned? Ah! Kim Taijin raised his hand and scratched his head lightly. To be honest, he's amazing. It makes me not know how to learn. Guok Pilsung had to remind him, just observe a lot and you will get used to it. Don't rush, there are many opportunities. Ao Guangho, at this moment, tiredly scolded. In the end, everything will be handled by me, right? But why haven't I seen the completion notification? Suddenly, Guok Pilsung frowned and thought, something's not right. The boss has been defeated. Why hasn't anything changed? Kim Taijin discovered something and spoke up. Oh, what's that? A crack appeared, glowing brightly. Guok Pilsung's eyes widened and he thought, that is, the crack got bigger and bigger. It could be a gate inside a gate. Taijin spoke, wondering, what is that? They had never seen a gate like that before. Guok Pilsung immediately affirmed, it's definitely not the exit. Then, Guok Pilsung spoke, Taijin, you should go back to the entrance. Guok Pilsung pointed behind him and added, I'll continue exploring with this guy. Taijin was surprised by this. Taijin interjected, so you will too? But before he could finish, Guok Pilsung raised his hand to stop him. Guok Pilsung explained, I don't know what dangers await inside, and it's not something you can handle. Then, Guok Pilsung put his hands in his pockets and said, get out of the dungeon and report the current situation to Shokshan. Taijin was puzzled, not knowing how to answer. The guy behind him spoke unhappily. Hey, can you ask my opinion for once? Both people turned to look at him. Guok Pilsung glanced at Xiao Guangho and spoke, what, not satisfied? Ao Guangho, scared, recoiled and trembled. Ah, no. Taijin thought, even if I don't want to, if I follow, I'll only be a burden. Then Taijin said, I understand. Then, the main character gave a confident smile and said, okay. Then Guok Pilsung turned his back and said, good. Guok Pilsung put his hand on his hat and spoke coolly, okay, I'll leave that part to you. Taijin could only reply, Guok Pilsung angrily pushed Xiao Guangho in and shouted, get in there immediately. Ao Guangho just endured the blow and replied, I'm going right away. Taijin wished Guok Pilsung well silently, be careful. When they entered inside, they only saw a mountain and a sky as red as blood. A beast roared, roar. Ao Guangho was fighting the monster. The monster rushed towards him, roar, but Xiao Guangho just lightly dodged, then slashed, splitting the monster's arm in two. Ao Guangho then said angrily, annoying. Then, he slashed off the monster's head. Xiao Guangho also landed lightly. He stood up and said coldly, damn it, just entering the dungeon and I already met something like this. Suddenly, a monster rushed towards him from behind. Roar. Xiao Guangho was startled by this, but Guok Pilsung appeared at the right moment, slashing off the monster's head lightly. Guok Pilsung landed in front of Xiao Guangho. Ao Guangho looked at Guok Pilsung and said, TSK, what kind of dungeon is this? These things are the boss of a Class B dungeon that we just finished. He angrily gritted his teeth. Damn it, like this, the dungeon ranking has no meaning anymore, and the entrance is gone. Now how do we get out? Guok Pilsung looked back at the monster's head, thinking to himself, this is indeed a dungeon of unpredictable levels, but if Class B hunters enter and don't know anything, they will all be in danger. Ao Guangho looked at Guok Pilsung and asked, as long as we defeat the boss, we can get out, right? Guok Pilsung folded his arms and said, how would I know? Then the guy held his back and lamented, damn it, what kind of dungeon is this? Guok Pilsung asked the guy, hey, how long have you been a hunter? Ao Guangho asked back, what, me? Xiao Guangho muttered, probably about 5 years. Guok Pilsung thought, the dungeon ranking ability has only been around for 5 or 6 years, so. Ao Guangho asked Guok Pilsung, why are you asking? Guok Pilsung ignored him and continued thinking, even though he's a Class S hunter, it seems he has never experienced a non-ranked dungeon like this. Then Guok Pilsung replied, forget all your ordinary knowledge, the dungeon is a place where anything is possible. Guok Pilsung was excited, thinking to himself, it's been a long time since I've gone to fight a dungeon, and I don't know what I'll meet. The old memories are coming back. Suddenly, a loud roar made both of them jump. A group of monsters rushed towards them. Ao Guangho darkened his face and said, they're still appearing. Suddenly, both of them discovered something and looked in one direction. A huge monster flew above their heads. It looked like a bat. 100,000 times larger. The monster glanced down. Grrr. He sat on a large rock, and the monsters roared as if welcoming the leader. Ao Guangho darkened his face and said, "Could that be the boss here?" Guok Pilsung just casually replied, "Is that so?" The boss discovered the two of them. It roared loudly. Guok Pilsung smirked and said, "Let's try it and we'll know." Then the leader roared loudly. The monsters next to it understood and began to look at the two of them. They rushed over, roaring, "Arg!" Ao Guangho was excited and said, "Good. Come on all at once." Guok Pilsung glanced at Seo Guangho and sighed. "Don't be careless, be careful." Ao Guangho replied, "Yes, of course," and rushed into the group of monsters. Ao Guangho continuously slashed at the monsters, causing them to roar in pain. Guok Pilsung also rushed in to help. "Ha!" Ao Guangho laughed maniacally. "Ha ha ha! You guys think you can fight Seo Guangho?" The leader, seeing its subordinates fall one after another, roared, "Grrr!" The leader spread its wings. It roared, then soared into the sky. Its face growled, "Grrr!" and a red light enveloped it. Then it attacked the two of them. Both Seo Guangho and Guok Pilsung were surprised, shouting, "It spits fire! Run!" The flames rushed towards the two of them, but fortunately, they escaped. But the small monsters were burned and roared, "Grrr!" Guok Pilsung, after avoiding the attack, sighed and said, "Attacking without caring about the lives of the subordinates? Really?" Ao Guangho, seeing that scene, couldn't help but say, "Damn it." The leader continued to rush forward. "Grrr!" Seo Guangho spoke up. "Thanks to its attack, the weak monsters were dealt with, but how do we deal with it when it keeps flying around like this?" Guok Pilsung glanced left and right. "Let me see." Ao Guangho was puzzled. Guok Pilsung picked up a rock and said, "This size is enough." Ao Guangho's face darkened and asked, "What are you doing? Are you really going to throw a rock at it?" Guok Pilsung affirmed, "That's right." Then he picked up the rock and put it on his shoulder. Guok Pilsung used all his strength and threw the rock. The leader was surprised by the attack. It couldn't dodge and was hit by the rock on its shoulder. The leader roared, "Grrr!" Ao Guangho stammered, "What was that? Do you know how to use long-range skills?" Guok Pilsung calmly replied, "Skills? I just threw it with all my strength." Ao Guangho was shocked by the sentence, thinking to himself, "Just now was just throwing with all my strength? What is this monster's true identity?" The leader was angry and roared, "Grrr!" Ao Guangho worriedly said, "It seems to be going crazy." Then the monster rushed towards Guok Pilsung like an arrow. Roar. Guok Pilsung smirked. "It's so foolish, giving up its only advantage." Then the sword Guok Pilsung held in his hand glowed. The monster raised its new nail claws towards Guok Pilsung. Roar. Guok Pilsung confidently said, "Come on." Park Dobbin spoke, asking Taijin, "How long has Hunter Guok Pilsung been in the gate?" Taijin replied, "About 6 hours." Park Dobbin thought anxiously, "I have a bad feeling. Just sitting here and waiting. Is that okay?" Taijin realized something. "Ah." Taijin excitedly said, "The gate is shrinking. It seems the dungeon has been conquered." Park Dobbin sighed and thought, "Thank goodness, so he did it. We can breathe a sigh of relief for now." But Taijin spoke fearfully, "Oh, the gate is almost closed, but Hunter Guok Pilsung and Seo Guangho still haven't come out." Park Dobbin also realized this and was worried. Park Dobbin thought anxiously, "How is he?" Taijin trembled and said, "The gate is completely closed." The gate was completely closed before their eyes. Park Dobbin's face darkened, worried. Why is this happening? What exactly happened in the dungeon? On the bridge, Park Dobbin was still standing, his arms crossed, waiting for something. He remained silent and didn't speak. Suddenly, Taijin, who had just run over, reported anxiously, "Sir, I searched around, but I couldn't find any signs of Hunters Guok Pilsung and Seo Guangho." The words had just left his mouth. Park Dobbin clenched his teeth. "Damn it!" He pointed forward and ordered, "Search around again. If there's any small trace, report it to me immediately." He heard this and accepted the order. "Yes." Park Dobbin was very worried, asking himself, "Where are you, sir?" In another place, a monster was continuously growling, "Grrr!" Seeing Guok Pilsung and Seo Guangho on this side, it plunged its face down and roared loudly, "Roar!" Ignoring everything, the monster kept the same tone and roared, "Roar!" Holding the weapon tightly in his hand, Guok Pilsung challenged, "Okay, come on then." The monster was very obedient, quickly rushed over and roared loudly, "Roar!" It continuously chased and attacked him. Meanwhile, he continuously lured it to rough and dangerous terrains. As he ran, he exhaled, "Phew. Is it over?" Ao Guangho saw this and asked, "That was hard on you. It's probably over now, right?" At this moment, Guok Pilsung was very bitter, yelling, "You are a Class S hunter. And you just stood there and watched? Ao Guangho just awkwardly scratched his head. Anyway, I don't need to do anything myself. Guok Pilsung could only sigh and lament. These days, young people really are. Ao Guangho, hearing these complaints, didn't know what to do but burst into laughter. Haha. Suddenly, behind the two, the sounds of growling were heard. Grrr. Both of them immediately turned to look and received a pair of red eyes. In Guok Pilsung's mind, a thought flashed. Another new monster? Wasn't the last one the boss? The monster's shadow overwhelmed the two, darkening the surroundings. Then, near them, another monster appeared, sticking its long tongue out. Xiao Guangho cursed. Damn it, what are these things again? Guok Pilsung quickly replied, how would I know? Guok Pilsung's eyes glanced at it and pondered. I have never encountered a dungeon this unpredictable. The beast's eyes were red, and it growled a few times. Grrr. Another one began to roar. Grrr. The two were facing away from each other. Guok Pilsung considered. They're coming. Xiao Guangho cursed again. Damn it, we shouldn't have come in. A monster rushed towards him. Suddenly, it roared and attacked the other monster. Much to Guok Pilsung's surprise, roar. Ao Guangho suddenly asked, what? Why are they suddenly fighting each other? He just replied indifferently, how would I know? Guok Pilsung frowned and asked himself, what kind of place is this, after all? At the same time, there was a strange sound, making both of them cover their heads uncomfortably. He felt a question in his heart, what is this sound? They could only remain silent because of the strange sound. Suddenly, a blue circle appeared, which was very unusual. My body. Then, suddenly, an information panel appeared, announcing, dungeon cleared. Rewards will be granted immediately. You have received a special blessing. Seeing these lines, Guok Pilsung wondered, a blessing? What he received was cryo-resistance, immunity to cold. Ao Guangho, at this moment, was just as shocked as Guok Pilsung. The place where the two fought was now only a desolate wasteland with a red sky. It started to snow, and it got thicker and thicker. Guok Pilsung's feet continued to move. Fighting against the cold, he was still wondering, where is this? I thought we got out of the dungeon, but now we have to go to another strange place. He didn't see the figure of Guangho anymore. Suddenly, he raised his hand and felt, it's quite cold here, but I don't feel cold at all, probably because of the cryo-resistance blessing I just received. It's like someone is giving me the necessary ability. Is all of this just by chance? What is a blessing after all? The question was still unanswered, but Guok Pilsung still continued walking. Suddenly, in front, loud growling sounds were heard. A monster, many times bigger than Guok Pilsung, was trying to intimidate him. Roar. On his face, a look of worry appeared, and he started cursing. Damn it, so I still haven't left the dungeon? It quickly rushed over, preparing to punch him and roar, roar. Guok Pilsung was very angry and scolded. You're too noisy. After defeating the beast, he just contemptuously said, this monster is nothing special. Suddenly, something else caught his attention. A warning flashed in his heart. There are voices. Guok Pilsung, curious, walked in the direction of the sound. He stood behind a tree and peeked, staring down at the place. Below, a group of people were surrounded by monsters. They looked at each other and made sounds that he couldn't hear clearly. His heart made a judgment. Westerners. What are they saying? Are they foreign hunters? After a roar, one of the Westerners raised his sword to block an attack. The person next to him immediately shouted, Leader. Guok Pilsung stayed hidden and judged, this looks dangerous. These Westerners began to shout loudly. Humph. Then, they tried to block the attack and grunted softly, hurt. The monster had started attacking the Western girl and roared loudly, roar. The girl was very scared and only knew how to cough lightly. Cough. A slash suddenly appeared from nowhere. Guok Pilsung appeared with the heroic act of saving the beauty. He didn't turn around to look behind, and spoke up, it's dangerous. Let me help. A thought suddenly sounded in the girl's heart. An Easterner, she asked in her Western accent, who are you? Meanwhile, Guok Pilsung couldn't understand her words, suddenly asking, what are you saying? Speak Korean. Korean? Don't know Korean, huh? Korea. The girl realized, Korea? A Korean. The person next to her suddenly shouted, how can a Korean come here? Another person continued, I don't know. Suspicious. Guok Pilsung was trying to help while they were still talking, making him very angry. He shouted, you guys, I went to help, and you were just standing there? One of the group spoke up, Leader, it seems he's really helping us handle the monsters. The girl ordered, prioritize handling the monsters first. Then, she lowered her face and replied, okay. The girl swung her sword forward and ordered the people behind her, support him together. Guok Pilsung gave a faint smile. Finally, we understand each other. The sky was getting dark, causing him to quickly warn, Everyone, be careful. The white, snowy space remained. At this time, the monsters had all been defeated. The girl, standing in front, happily exhaled and spoke, "Ha, ha, is everyone safe?" Her teammate replied, "Yes, we're fine." Then they all turned their gazes to him and asked, "But, what should we do with this person?" Suddenly, a call sounded. "Hey!" He turned and looked at her. "Hmm?" The girl started questioning him. "The entrance to this dungeon is not a place anyone can come to. So, how did you get in here?" He could only look at them helplessly and speak, "I really don't understand what you're saying. TSK, I don't understand. Speak Korean." The girl, very angry, frowned and pondered, "TSK, really can't talk to him. This guy is very suspicious, but we can't just leave him." Then, she slowly approached him. "Hey, Korean hunter, going alone in this dungeon will be very dangerous. If you want to get out safely, then from now on, follow us." In his heart, a question suddenly appeared. "You want me to help you get through the dungeon or something?" He eagerly reached out his hand. "Okay, I'll help you." Seeing his outstretched hand, she misunderstood and asked, "He wants to thank us?" The two of them shook hands. "No need to thank me. We'll talk later after we get out of the dungeon." Then she turned and left, ordering, "Let's continue attacking the dungeon." Although the rest all answered, "Yes," but they all showed a hint of worry. Guak Pilsung, nearby, glanced over and assessed, "These guys are really enthusiastic." On the snow-covered path, at this time, 5 people were approaching a cliff. One of the group looked at his device and spoke, "Leader, it seems the dungeon boss is in here." She looked at him and replied, Good work." Guak Pilsung, from behind, came over to pry. "Oh, what's that skill? Can you locate the boss's position?" The person was startled and shouted, "What are you doing?" He just calmly said, "Does it have to be so dramatic?" The girl reminded, "Anna, calm down, don't get agitated." Anna just bowed her head and apologized. As he walked, a call sounded from behind. "Hey, Korean." The girl started warning, "We told you to follow, but that doesn't mean we trust you." Her eyes gradually revealed a sense of gloom. "If you do something suspicious, we can eliminate you immediately." Guak Pilsung just scratched his head, saying, "I don't understand what you're saying, but I'm sure it's not good." "Okay, I'll be more careful." The girl was more satisfied and thought, "It seems he understands roughly." Then, she turned and reminded her teammates, "Okay, no more chatting. From now on, everyone must focus. Don't let your guard down. Be absolutely careful." The 3 of them replied in unison, "Yes." Guak Pilsung calmly looked at their actions and just hummed. The sky was gradually turning dark. At this time, the girl wondered, "Anna, what's the situation with scouting the boss?" Anna stared at her device and reported, "Right in front of us." The girl just felt something was unusual. "Strange, why can't I sense anything around here?" Guak Pilsung was also pondering, as if judging something. Suddenly, he shouted a warning, "Everyone, be careful." The girl looked at him and asked, "What?" Beneath their feet, tremors began to appear. The girl at this moment began to realize something unusual. Guak Pilsung shouted a warning, "Below, the ground is about to collapse." The ground revealed a large trench, causing all 5 people to be sucked in. They all shouted and were very scared. AAA. Then, the whole group landed safely. The girl worried and asked, "Cough, is everyone okay?" Anna, lying nearby, replied, "Yes." The girl was still looking around and thinking, "Did we fall from above? I didn't expect this space to be here under the cave." Suddenly, behind them, a 6th person appeared. The giant monster was always staring at her. The group suddenly shouted, "Leader," and everyone blamed themselves. "Damn it, we were careless." The monster was continuously roaring, "Grrr." The ground shook more strongly than before. Everyone began to sweat. The monster remained still, opening its eyes. Slowly, its mouth opened. At this moment, the girl was trying to push the monster's heavy punch further away. She tried so hard that her whole body was covered in sweat, and she whispered, "Hurt." It looked at her for a while and then calmly roared. The punch began to increase in force. She was worried that she couldn't withstand it and gritted her teeth. "Hurt." Anna, behind her, raised her bow and spoke, "Leader, I will support you." Another person also swung their weapon and shouted, "Hiya." The monster still took the attack from everyone. However, their faces still showed a hint of worry. The monster kept roaring, "Grrr." Those delicate attacks made it increasingly angry and roared even louder. The person in the team was very worried and cried out, "No, our attacks are completely useless." At this moment, the girl was very tired from the monster's attack. Hurt. Thoughts suddenly appeared in her heart. "Damn it, I can't push it away. Am I going to die like this?" At the same time, a call sounded from behind. "Hey." Guak Pilsung pointed at the monster and asked, "Can I take down that monster? It doesn't look good." The girl, who was struggling to hold on, asked herself, "What did he just say?" At this moment, he just ignored everything and approached with a weapon in his hand. Well, consider that you all agreed then. The person in the team was a little startled and cried out, "Hey, what are you doing?" Meanwhile, he was already standing in front of the monster and looking at it. Grrr. Guak Pilsung gave a smile and hesitated. So, let me finish this quickly then. Outside, the sky, covered in snow, was still there. The gate to the dungeon still had someone guarding it. Suddenly, this person stared at the gate and wondered, how long has Angela's group been in there? The person behind began to reply, about 96 hours, sir. So, this person judged, not good, it seems they failed this time. He carefully observed the gate. He suddenly shouted, the gate is starting to close. Has the attack been successful? From inside the gate, objects began to appear. He immediately called out, oh, Angela, my goddess. He closed his eyes and pouted. I'm so glad you're back safe. Huh? Guak Pilsung's face suddenly froze with a look of worry. The person standing at the gate also froze, wondering, who is he? Just as he stepped out of the dungeon, Guak Pilsung was surrounded by many people. He asked bewilderedly, like a lost person, where is this, after all? Finally, I'm out of the dungeon, right? The man was very angry. Humph, he snorted. He pointed his gun at Guak Pilsung's head and asked, who are you? In his mind, thoughts began to surface. Why is this East Asian person, of unknown origin, appearing here? What happened to Angela? Guak Pilsung was equally fierce and swaggered with his sword. Are you guys the comrades of those girls inside? You're wearing uniforms, so you must be soldiers, right? The man in the uniform was very angry and yelled, what happened to Angela's group? How did you get into the gate? Guak Pilsung was infuriated and yelled, why do you always point guns at people for no reason? The man in the uniform continued to point his gun, threatening, you take one more step and I'll shoot. The two were confronting each other fiercely. The man in the uniform snorted. At this moment, Angela appeared and shouted, what the hell are you doing? He was overjoyed and shouted, Angela. He flew over and was relieved. You're safe. I found a suspicious person here. Get more backup. Angela angrily shouted. Ivan, holding the advantage, happily said, good. With Angela's help, this guy is sure to be defeated. However, immediately after, Ivan was stepped on by Angela, who was on top of him. He was a little puzzled and asked, what are you doing, Angela? Angela reminded, Ivan, if you don't want to die, put down your gun now. He was even more worried and asked, what? Angela apologized. On behalf of the group, I'm very sorry for this rudeness. Please forgive us. It's just because a person of unknown origin suddenly appeared, so they were startled. Please understand. Guak Pilsung could only sigh. What's the commotion? I thought I was about to kill him. I was just trying to correct his behavior. Then suddenly, a loud shout sounded. Hey! Guak Pilsung picked up the gun in front of Ivan. He examined it for a few minutes and then reminded him. Guns are useless against a skilled hunter. Got it? A punch suddenly appeared, along with a reminder, as a commander, act more cautiously and calmly. A foolish commander can put the whole team in danger. Ivan didn't say anything more, just showed a look of frustration, lying flat on the ground. The other two in the team were discussing with each other. What did that guy just say? It meant if we annoyed him again, he would eliminate us completely. That evening, at a Russian military base, Guak Pilsung was forced to sit inside a closed room. He questioned with an angry look. What is this? How long are you planning to make me wait? It felt like he had waited for an hour. The door slowly opened and someone entered. This person was a man with deep eyes. He entered without paying any attention to him, just looking up at the sky. The eyes revealed a look of judgment. Then, gradually, he made some assessments. He looks fierce, too. He sat down and began to ask a question. Are you Korean? His eyes showed a look of thoughtfulness, asking himself, he can speak Korean? Suddenly, his hand slammed down on the table. The words carried a bit of restraint. Do you like any idols? Guak Pilsung immediately froze, pondering. Idols? The man began to introduce himself. I'm a fan of Hot Pink and aespa. I've been watching YouTube and I've liked them for 10 years. My dream is to go to Korea once. He thought, what is this guy saying? Is he really speaking Korean? Suddenly, a voice sounded from outside. Lieutenant Gorbachev, are you here to play? From inside, he said back, excuse me, Major Romanov. Ivan suddenly spoke, sorry for making you wait so long. Because I had to find an interpreter who knows Korean, it took some time. Then he introduced, Lieutenant Sergei Gorbachev will help translate the words I say. Hearing his name mentioned, Sergei introduced himself. I am Lieutenant Sergei Gorbachev. You can just call me Sergei. Then he introduced himself. I am Major Ivan Romanov. After the two of them introduced themselves, Guak Pilsung spoke. I am Guak Pilsung, a hunter from Korea. Hearing this name, in Ivan's heart, he repeated the name. Guak Pilsung. Outside the interrogation room, Ivan suddenly called out Angela's name. What happened in the dungeon? Why did you protect that person? Angela began to explain. The monsters in the dungeon were stronger than we thought. We almost all got in danger. As she spoke, she looked inside the room. But he defeated the dungeon boss with just one blow. I think he's quite friendly with us, so don't provoke him unnecessarily. What's important now is to find out who this person is. A look of sadness began to appear in Ivan's eyes. Back in the interrogation room, Ivan began to speak. I'll get straight to the point. How could a foreign hunter armed like you invade our military area without permission? Moreover, according to the investigation, you also don't have an entry-exit record, so there are many suspicious points. If you can't explain it clearly, this could be a serious issue causing national disputes. Ivan's questioning gaze remained unchanged. Guak Pilsung questioned, Are you Ivan, right? And where is this, after all? Ivan couldn't stand the ignorance anymore and spoke. Wait, but he just calmly said, Hey, answer my question first. I don't know why I am here either. Ivan slammed his hand on the table. An accident happened. When I woke up, I was in that dungeon. You think I will believe those words? Guak Pilsung was still calm as before. Believe it or not, but I've told the truth. Now, it's your turn to answer my questions. Ivan looked at him again and sighed. Humph. Then, he began to introduce. This is restricted zone number 8 of the former Russian Federation. In his mind, a question came to him. Russia? So, I've come to such a faraway place? Ivan recalled and recounted, after the dungeon appeared, our country's president was killed by monsters. Because there was no leader, we couldn't stop the dungeon from spreading over our vast territory. Therefore, most of the territory is now invaded by monsters. Currently the military is trying to regain the territory, but our country has now lost most of its national functions and is facing many difficulties. In such an unstable situation, we are forced to be wary of suspicious people like you. Guak Pilsung suddenly fell into a deep thought. At that moment, Angela ran into the room and shouted, Ivan, something big happened. Ivan calmly glanced over and asked, What's wrong, Angela? She hesitated. The thing is, outside, the sky was covered. Suddenly, a scream sounded. AAA. A monster appeared, attacking everyone. At the former city of the Russian Federation, Tsarograd, everyone was actively attacking the monsters. In another corner, people began to worry. Lieutenant, the monsters are coming in droves. We won't be able to hold out like this. Suddenly, the man heard the growling sounds. From the bushes, a monster suddenly appeared, violently rushing in, creating a chaotic atmosphere. The monster, with red eyes, was preparing to chew up everything in front of it. Grrr. It opened its mouth wide, preparing to swallow the person in front of it. Immediately after, a scream was heard. AAA. A person holding a weapon in his hand rushed over to help. The person who was about to become a meal for the monster sighed with relief. At this moment, a man appeared and asked, Is everyone okay? Seeing him, the person immediately called, Major Garov. Everyone was happier and cheered. It's Major Garov, the Class S hunter, hero of the Russian Federation. He declared to everyone, Everyone, reinforcements from the monster eradication team will arrive today. Before that, we must hold the line at all costs. Major Garov declared heroically, No one retreat. His eyes revealed a determined look. If we lose, our families will be in danger. Everyone enthusiastically responded in unison, Understood. He didn't speak anymore, just calmly looked at everyone with a thoughtful look. Back in the interrogation room, Guak Pilsung, Angela was reporting to Ivan, Major Garov just contacted me. The monsters in Angela's area are continuing to head west. If we don't stop these monsters, 100,000 people in Tsarograd will be in danger. The city, as night fell, became very gloomy and desolate. At this moment, Ivan was very pensive. Suddenly, he called out, Lieutenant Gorbachev. Hearing his name called, Gorbachev promptly replied, Yes. Ivan turned, preparing to leave, as he divided the tasks. Gather all the hunters and soldiers in the base. We're going to Tsarograd with all our strength. He replied, Yes. Then Ivan glanced at Guak Pilsung. And as for him, Angela, you will stay and supervise him. The order was just given when Angela immediately protested. Ivan, what are you saying? At a time when there are few people, you're making me stay here just to supervise. Are you out of your mind, Ivan? Suddenly, he angrily shouted, to her surprise, Lieutenant Angela Boriskaya, this is an order. You will stay and supervise this person. Then, Ivan quickly left. Let's go, Lieutenant Gorbachev. Ah, yes. Inside the room, Angela was very angry, but she still clenched her teeth. Meanwhile, Gorbachev was preparing, arranging his hat and coat, and walked behind Ivan. Ivan, walking ahead, was very determined. His heart was still thinking, I don't want to tremble with fear again because you won't come back. Please forgive my selfishness. Inside the room, Angela was very angry and slammed her fist on the table. Damn it. Her eyes gradually lowered as she thought, Ivan, you intentionally let me leave the mission because you're afraid I'll be in danger, right? But that makes a soldier like me even more pathetic than ever. At this moment, Guok Pilsung was still stupidly looking at life. Suddenly, a thought appeared in his head. Why did they suddenly start arguing? He spoke, Hey, what's all the commotion about? Angela deliberately replied casually, Sorry for making you see unpleasant things. Sorry. But he stubbornly spoke, I don't know what's going on. But don't become someone who blindly follows what others say. Only those who dare to fight and face things until they see the reasonableness can grow. Hearing those words, Angela immediately raised her head and spoke, You. Guok Pilsung's heart was a little excited. Why do you look so scary? If you want something, just say it. Angela began to rethink his words and said to herself, Ivan told me to stay here, but I can't just obey that order. He smiled and added, That's right. Even if you don't say it, I'm sure you understand what I mean. Her eyes looked at him again. The problem is, how should I handle this person? I don't know his abilities, but if he's not an enemy, he will definitely be a great helper on the battlefield. He's very suspicious, but this time, let's trust my intuition. And she suddenly asked, Hey, I have something to ask of you, Outside, the sky was still covered in white snow. Everyone was still focusing on firing their guns. What they were aiming at was a black monster that was approaching. The black thing, no matter how many bullets it received, didn't seem to be affected. Suddenly, someone ordered, Everyone, stop firing. He looked at it and pondered, Is this effective? The two people were calmly looking at each other. Suddenly, it got closer and growled a few times, Grrr. It raised its hand high. Immediately after, it slammed down hard on where these people were standing, causing them to scream, AAA. The man was affected and knelt, moaning, hurt. Meanwhile, it was still rushing towards them. Its mouth opened wide, preparing to swallow everyone. The man was very worried and scared. Suddenly, something blocked in front of it. It was surprised and roared loudly, Grrr. A teammate quickly rushed and stood in front of the monster with a shield for protection. Another person also rushed over from somewhere, preparing to attack. Ha! Then, this person shouted, Earthquake! The monster's eyes flashed. Immediately after, the knight showed a look of disdain and glanced at it. Its whole body swayed as if it was about to fall over. The man thought to himself, The monster eradication team? A person appeared and asked, Are you okay? Ivan had just arrived and introduced, I am Major Ivan Romanov, commander of the No. 4 Monster Eradication Team. The man said, Thank you for your help. But what Ivan was concerned about at this moment was something else. He only kept asking, Where is Major Garov? The other person explained, Because the forces have been dispersed to expand the front lines, I'm not sure either. At this moment, the person behind him spoke up, Major Romanov, a large number of monsters are coming from the east. The monsters with sharp teeth were continuously approaching. The girl was very worried and asked, What should we do? Ivan began to have theories in his head. Why did a large number of monsters suddenly come? Even though we've fought monsters for many years, I've never seen this before. The strangest thing is that different monster species are jostling and chaotic like that. Ivan's eyebrows furrowed. It's like, scared animals are running away from something. In another place, snow still covered everything in white. A roar sounded. Grrr. In the cold snow of the mountains, the monster roared in pain from the volleys of bullets. The monster fell in front of the group. A soldier exclaimed, Damn it, we're out of mana bullets. The soldier next to him asked, Can't we use normal bullets? A soldier, as if in command, tapped the other soldier's head and scolded, You idiot. The commander explained, Don't you know that weapons made of mana stones are only effective against high-level monsters? The soldier stammered, I'm sorry. Then the commander pointed to the two people and said, See those hunters over there? The commander asked, In your opinion, what's the reason they can fight monsters? The soldier obediently replied, Isn't it because they have power that surpasses humans? The commander agreed, Yes, that's right, but, because the power they use is the power contained in mana stones, so besides hunters, they are also called by another name, those chosen by the gods. A mammoth-sized monster charged toward the soldiers. With just a stomp, the soldiers were thrown aside and screamed in pain. A woman raised her hand and cast a spell, binding swamp. The ground beneath them began to move. They shouted, Roar! The woman shot an energy arrow towards the monsters. The monster, with its large body, couldn't dodge and was hit directly in the head. The monster roared, Grrr. 61 then shouted, Sophie, give me more. Sophie obediently replied, Yes. Weapon enhancement, defense enhancement, stamina enhancement. Then 61 charged towards the monster. Inside the snowy forest, Guok Pilsung was standing his ground, his eyes looking ahead with a cold glint. Two monsters rushed towards Guok Pilsung, roaring, roar. Guok Pilsung, without any fear, used his energy and his sword, weapon enhancement. With a light slash, he blew away the two monsters. A giant monster was fighting other hunters, roaring, grrr. A commander ordered, protect the hunters. The soldiers, hearing this, continuously fired their guns. The monsters all fell before the guns of the soldiers. The commander thought to himself, it looks like we're gambling, but the situation is gradually changing. Is it because of that person that the morale of the soldiers is rising? But the monster that was still alive, after seeing Guok Pilsung easily defeat its comrades, began to retreat in fear. Suddenly, a shout rang out, and Guok Pilsung also turned to look. The monster in the form of a mammoth appeared before the soldiers, grrr. With just a stomp, it caused the soldiers to scream in horror. Seeing this, Guok Pilsung grabbed his sword and rushed towards the monster. Guok Pilsung jumped high into the air. With just one slash, Guok Pilsung defeated the monster. Guok Pilsung gently landed in a cool manner. A soldier asked, who is that East Asian person? He's wiping out the monsters all by himself. Angela was stunned by Guok Pilsung's actions. Angela secretly remarked, it's amazing, only using minimal skills, but still controlling the monsters effectively. Then Angela continued to praise, he looks like he's only in his early 20s, but his skills are extremely seasoned. Then, suddenly, she felt a chill down her spine and thought to herself, why do I suddenly feel uneasy? I hope my prediction is wrong. Over here, 61 was fighting some monster, Hiya. After defeating the monsters, 61 relaxed after eliminating the monsters. 61 then looked over and called out to Angela, leader, this side is cleared, okay? Suddenly, the commander called out loudly, Angela, Major Garf's team just contacted us. It seems they were able to hold the front line by a hair's breadth. Then he thought, it's great, they can hold on with such little damage. From behind him, a monster suddenly appeared, twitching. The monster jumped up and rushed over. Roar! But Guok Pilsung appeared in time, slicing the monster in half. Guok Pilsung looked at the monster's body lying on the ground and pondered. A person rushed over, trembling, and asked, Major, are you okay? The major replied, I'm okay. Guok Pilsung reminded, remember this well, the moment you think everything is over is the most dangerous time. Never let your guard down until the last minute. The major thanked him, thank you, you saved my life. Then the major added, I want to apologize for my rude behavior to you earlier. Without you, we wouldn't have been able to stop the monster invasion. But Guok Pilsung replied, it's not over yet. The major asked, what? Guok Pilsung explained, the way the monsters are moving is very strange. Don't you see? A monster is a general term for different creatures that appear from the dungeon carrying mana stones. Even though they are all called monsters, they are usually hostile to each other. But this time, different types of monsters are mixing together and moving in the same direction. Isn't that strange? The major stammered, that is. Suddenly, a blizzard struck. A soldier asked, why is it suddenly snowing? Guok Pilsung replied, I've experienced something similar once. The monsters are moving in herds like that to escape from a higher level predator. A red-eyed monster appeared from behind the snow. Grrr. Angela stammered, what is that? Guok Pilsung said, I had hoped my prediction was wrong, but in the end, it turned out like this. A dragon appeared before them. The dragon roared. The major darkened his face and thought, what is that? I have never seen a monster with this size and pressure before. A soldier stepped forward and asked, Major, what should we do? Please give the order. But at this moment, the major's face was gloomy and worried. What should we do? Can we really fight and win against that thing? Guok Pilsung said calmly, you should evacuate the soldiers and civilians around here. The weapons of ordinary soldiers can't harm that thing. The major asked, what are you going to do? Guok Pilsung replied with a smile on his face. Me? Of course, I'm going to fight. The major worriedly asked, do you want to die? Suddenly, the major shut his mouth. Then, he said affectionately, it seems you've made me strange too, but it seems you will definitely do something. Guok Pilsung replied, then I have to try not to disappoint everyone, right? Then the major replied, in that case, please put all your hope on you. Please save everyone. Guok Pilsung turned and replied, okay, leave it to me, then moved forward alone. Inside the snowy forest, still covered in thick snow, a cold wind blew through the desolate path. A monster suddenly appeared with sharp claws. Its large silhouette glided through the forest. 12, standing nearby, saw it walking. Then she suddenly yelled, everyone, prepare to fight. As soon as the order was given, the people behind her were ready with their bows and arrows, waiting for the next command. Then she suddenly shouted, all troops, fire. As soon as the order ended, everyone pulled their bows and released the arrows forward. The arrows flew to where the monster had just walked and struck it. Suddenly, its eyes glowed red and it began to growl. Another girl frowned. Magic team, attack! The magic team immediately cast spells. A flame suddenly appeared and flew towards it. The flame flew straight towards the monster. Then, a large explosion suddenly occurred there. After the explosion, black smoke flew everywhere, and it was no longer clear where the monster was. Seeing this, Angela asked, "Was it effective?" The monster's eyes were still glowing red, and it was as strong as it was at the beginning. Gradually, its body began to glow as if it was about to be enhanced. The light was blinding, causing everyone to cover their eyes. Angela was struggling and gritted her teeth. A premonition suddenly came to her mind. Blizzard. The blizzard gradually invaded the forest. Elsewhere, all the people in the sniper team were very worried, shouting chaotically. They kept shouting while the ice began to freeze on their bodies. The monster was still growling in the blizzard without being affected at all. Angela turned back and ordered, "Get as far away from the area around the monster as possible. Otherwise, you'll be frozen." Then a thought came to her mind. The area around the monster is covered in cold air, making it difficult to approach. We can't fight at close range like this. The monster slowly approached. Its breath was the breath of a dragon, emitting harsh cold that froze everything around it. Guak Pilsung also exhaled. Then, his whole body slowly slid on the glossy ice. The monster continued to growl, emitting terrifying sounds. Hesitating, it suddenly turned towards Guak Pilsung, drawing near and roaring loudly. Just as Angela saw him, she called out to stop him. "No, it's too reckless. If you get close, you'll be frozen." Guak Pilsung still gritted his teeth and retorted, "Don't worry." Then he began to use the cold resistance effect. "It will completely negate the damage from the cold," he continued. "Luckily, I have a suitable skill ready." Angela was very panicked at this sight but couldn't say anything. Around the monster, there were gradually large blocks of ice. Guak Pilsung swung his sword from behind, rushing in front of it. Then, unexpectedly, he stabbed his sword hard into its body. The monster roared in pain. Then he turned his face to look and was surprised. How is that possible? Angela, seeing this scene, asked herself, did he intend to make things difficult for himself from the beginning? She pondered, the cold surrounding the monster clearly hasn't disappeared, so why is he not affected at all? Guak Pilsung continued to rush towards the monster. His teeth were clenched and resolute, as if because he was fighting this monster, he had prepared some suitable skills. Suddenly, many things coincided. This is not good at all. Guak Pilsung gradually felt uncomfortable with this situation, while the monster obstinately rushed towards him. It was growling and trying to find him to attack. Its claws struck down on his body, causing him to be a little surprised. But immediately after, Guak Pilsung avoided the attack completely. His eyes glanced at that side. Inside the monster's mouth, a bright orb suddenly appeared. The orb gradually came out of its mouth and rushed towards him. He glanced towards it and pondered, "Is this one aiming for when I dodge?" From its mouth, it continuously spewed out waves of erupting ice and attacked him. Guak Pilsung tried to resist and cried out, "Hurt!" Suddenly, Garef flew in from somewhere with hot flames. The fire and ice interacted, creating a very different scene. He wondered, "Are you okay, young man?" Then he glanced at him and declared, "From now on, I will assist you." Guak Pilsung began to be stunned and asked, "My language?" Then he looked at Garef and asked, "Can you speak Korean?" He explained, "My wife is Korean, so I know a little bit." Then he spoke, "I heard from Major Romanov that you suddenly appeared in the dungeon, right?" Guak Pilsung hesitated. "That matter?" Garef raised his hand to stop him. "It doesn't matter where you come from. What's important is that we need you to eliminate that monster." He realized that this person was someone he could talk to and began to introduce himself. "I am Guak Pilsung." He also smiled and introduced, "Just call me Garef. I am a Class S hunter of the former Russian Federation and the commander of the monster hunting team." Then he laughed loudly. "Being old but still strong like this suddenly makes me feel so familiar." At this moment, the monster was still roaring and gradually approaching the two. Guak Pilsung spoke, "It seems to be very angry because its attack was blocked earlier." Then he smirked. "All right, let's fight." Garef tiredly exhaled. Immediately after, he continued to use his inner fire to attack the monster. The monster, feeling the scorching heat of the fire, continuously growled in discomfort. He placed one foot on the monster while covering his mouth with the other hand. He inadvertently glanced at his fur coat and remained silent. Suddenly, he flew forward while the monster chased after him. He began to think, the cold air it emanates makes it difficult to approach for combat. The winter monsoon in Syria is more like spring wind in comparison. At this moment, Guak Pilsung was still gritting his teeth and rushing towards it. He swung his sword and kicked hard at the monster's body. It roared in pain. Then he glanced at Garef and said, "I'll handle the melee attacks, you support me." Garef agreed. "All right." Then he glanced at him, wondering, Why is he unaffected by the extreme cold? A smile of admiration crept onto his face. How interesting. I never thought I, who always leads the front lines, would be supporting someone else like this. Meanwhile, the bright orb in front of the monster was still there. Then it suddenly spat out a block of ice to attack Guak Pilsung. He glanced at it and said, "Using the same trick, do you think I'll fall for it?" The monster angrily roared in frustration. At this point, Guak Pilsung had just landed on the ground while Garof was looking at him. The monster glared at the two of them and growled. Garof commented, "So stubborn, it doesn't seem fazed at all." But Guak Pilsung looked at it and added, "But the cold aura surrounding it has weakened a lot, which means it's taking damage." He looked at it and smiled. "There's a folk saying?" Garof, hearing this, asked, "What's saying?" Guak Pilsung looked at the monster and smiled. "Constant grinding sharpens even the dullest blade." Garof, hearing this, felt a little pleased. "That's an interesting saying." Then he rushed towards the monster. "All right, let's keep grinding it down then." 13 immediately ordered, "All troops support them." As soon as the order was given, everyone enthusiastically responded, "Yes." Then arrows continuously flew towards the monster. Along with that, Garof's burning power also continuously attacked. The flames flew straight toward it without any hindrance. Suddenly, a huge fire erupted. The monster opened its mouth wide and continuously roared. Seeing this, Guak Pilsung seized the opportunity to step on its ice paths while it was still roaring. He glided through the air, as if there was a path made just for him, and circled around the white monster. Guak Pilsung smiled reassuringly. "It's definitely reassuring to have someone supporting me." He stood on the ground and silently stared, then aimed his sword. At this moment, Guak Pilsung suddenly realized that the outer shell was only cracked in one place. That was its weakness. His eyes were now focused only on that spot and he praised, "Excellent." He rushed towards the spot he had just seen and shouted, "Take this." At the same time, Garf also rushed forward and ordered, "Support me." The monster immediately received an attack, fire burning its mouth and body. While it was distracted, Guak Pilsung also swung his sword, preparing to cut off its horns. His eyes widened and he shouted, "It's over." His sword stabbed hard into its body, where the crack gradually widened further. But suddenly, his sword shattered. This made him a little worried and he thought, "Damn it, the sword couldn't withstand the power and broke." Garf resolutely shouted, "Here." Then one of his swords was thrown to Guak Pilsung along with the urging, "Take it." Guak Pilsung seized the opportunity and landed on the ground, taking the sword. "This one's stable." He gradually felt the power within the sword and thanked him. Immediately after, he shouted loudly and used the sword, preparing to fight the monster. His shout continued to echo along with his efforts. A sword stroke swept around the monster's body. The sword flashed a hopeful blue. Then Guak Pilsung landed on the ground, his hand pushing hard against the ice surface. Instability suddenly appeared on the monster's body. Suddenly, a notification appeared. "Beast of the Wilds has been defeated." Angela, seeing this, was a little surprised. They defeated the monster. Garf also smiled approvingly. "They really did it. The dungeon has been cleared." Guak Pilsung exhaled a breath. "Finally cleared. The person who defeats the boss will receive a special reward. The reward is a rare sword skill, receive Dragon Slayer's Devastation." Guak Pilsung was a little curious as he read these lines. Then he thought, the skill name is pretty grand. Dragon Slayer's Devastation. What does this skill do? As he thought, he leaned against the monster's corpse and sighed in relief. At this moment, down below, people were discussing something amongst themselves. Guak Pilsung stood upstairs, observing this scene. Suddenly, Ivan approached. Embarrassed. "Sorry to keep you waiting." He immediately turned to look at him. "Looks like everyone's busy." Ivan replied, "Everyone's trying to recover from the aftermath of the battle. We're really grateful to you." I don't know how to respond, but Guak Pilsung calmly replied, "People live to help each other. Bringing me back to Korea is enough." Ivan was suddenly curious. "Are you planning to go back so soon?" Garf suddenly walked in, causing the people below to be so respectful that they panicked. "Lieutenant General Garf." He asked, puzzled, "Don't you want to stay here?" Hearing this, Guak Pilsung immediately asked, "Huh?" Garf explained, "Currently, our country is in a dangerous situation due to the dungeon outbreak. A large part of Russia has been occupied by monsters, so we really need talented people like you. If the hero of this battle like you stays, I promise to give you a worthy reward and treatment." Then Garf glanced at him and asked again, "What do you say?" However, Garf's sincere words were met with words that made him helpless. "I refuse." Garf asked with concern, "Is the reward not to your liking? Or are you still attached to your country?" He only replied, "I don't want to become a hero or receive a big reward. It's just that I still have things to do in Korea." Garf reluctantly said, "Then it can't be helped." To his surprise, Garf explained, "If you say so, I have to offer you a proposal you can't refuse." Guak Pilsung looked at him. A proposal I can't refuse? Garf looked at him intently and replied, I will. Guak Pilsung looked at him. Garf then declared that he would marry his daughter to him, causing him to be a little surprised and ask, huh? Garf took out a photo and introduced, this is my youngest daughter, Alexander Natasha. Then he asked with pride, what do you think? She's as beautiful as me, right? I'm sure you can't refuse this proposal, right? Immediately after was a loud laugh while he was still completely helpless. Outside the base, a question rang out, how is it? Have the necessary procedures been completed? Ivan happily replied, yes, take this document to the airport, they will guide you. Guak Pilsung happily thanked him. Garf looked at him and reminded, think carefully, this isn't an opportunity everyone gets. You're not going to marry my daughter? Guak Pilsung replied, I said I wasn't interested. Then he turned to a corner and cursed, so annoying. You guys must be suffering because of your superior, huh? Ivan still tried to maintain a serious expression, only coughing softly, ahem. Then Guak Pilsung glanced over and said, ah. He began to ask for a favor. Can I ask you for a favor? At this time, at the Chaga-on Guild, the man sitting in the chair suddenly wondered, huh? Then the other person reported, yes, I'm 18. The guild leader of Chaga-on. A look of bewilderment appeared on his face. It's me. A loud bang rang out from the phone. Park Sho-chan asked with some concern, Senior? He replied, what happened to you? You suddenly disappeared and everyone was worried to death. Guak Pilsung only closed his eyes, leisurely replying, I can't explain what happened either. Then Park Sho-chan spoke decisively. Then where are you? I'll come pick you up immediately. Guak Pilsung reached up and scratched his head, then replied, I'm in a place quite far away, but let me come back myself. Don't worry, you're also busy with the guild's affairs. I don't want to make you work harder. Then Park Sho-chan closed his eyes with a look of helplessness. I'm not that busy right now. Hearing these words, Guak Pilsung was puzzled and asked, why is that? Park Sho-chan hesitated. Actually, the association has started to take action against us. Guak Pilsung began to care more. What did they do? Immediately, Park Sho-chan remembered and started telling him, recently the association started restricting the entry and exit of our guild and the Arctic View Guild to the dungeons. It seems they discovered the connection between us a few days ago. Although we continuously requested the right to enter the dungeon, they still made all sorts of excuses not to approve it. Guak Pilsung's eyes showed a thoughtful look. They need a lot of money to run a guild. Selling magic stones and items from the dungeon is the most important source of income for the guild. Park Sho-chan reluctantly said, I'm really sorry. I really can't do anything more with my current abilities. However, Guak Pilsung still reassured, no, this isn't your fault. Then he had some calculations in his head. The right to enter the dungeon completely belongs to the Hunter Association. Even a big guild can't easily confront the association. Suddenly Garf interrupted to remind, hey, think again. This is the last chance. But he was still determined. I said I'm not interested. A light flashed in his eyes. Then he thought, okay, I can't sit still and let them control me anymore. He then made an appointment with Park Sho-chan for a later meeting, causing Park Sho-chan to ask with some confusion, huh? On this side, just as Guak Pilsung was about to hang up, Park Sho-chan stopped him. Senior, wait. He glanced at Garf and called out, hey, Lieutenant General. Garf, hearing his name called, said, huh? Did you finally change your mind? But he only glanced at him and began to ask for a favor. I want to ask you for a favor. Outside, snow continued to fall. The man with a freezing look was walking and complaining, it's so cold. Guak Pilsung saw him and said, a man complaining like this. Park Sho-chan helplessly closed his eyes and recounted, ever since Senior came back, only unexpected things have happened. I didn't expect you to suddenly come to Russia like this. Even if you return to Korea now, the association will make it difficult for you to approach the dungeons. Guak Pilsung carried his sword on his shoulder and walked calmly. He remembered the time he shook hands with Garf when making a deal and said, it just so happens that there's a shortage of people here to deal with the monsters from the dungeon outbreaks, so to support each other, I made an agreement with a high-ranking person here. To support each other, I made an agreement with a high-ranking person here. Suddenly, another person appeared and said, things like this can be left to the guild members. Why did you have to call me and Hunter Park Sho-chan here? Guak Pilsung stood between the two and explained, fewer people going will make it easier to avoid the association's attention. Stop complaining and focus on how to catch the monsters. The man exhaled a breath and then said, damn it, I'm really oppressed by capitalism. Then suddenly a loud scream rang out from somewhere. Guak Pilsung quickly urged, get ready, they're coming. Nearby, surrounded them were countless monsters continuously roaring. The centipede monster stood in front of Guak Pilsung, roaring. Guak Pilsung immediately slashed down with his sword. Park Sho-chan raised his flaming fist. He powerfully punched forward. Go Young-hoon was hit and flew backward. Ugh. The monster continued to rush towards Go Young-hoon, roaring. Go Young-hoon thought to himself, those guys are like monsters. I knew they were strong, but I didn't expect them to be this strong. The monster appeared right in front of Go Young-hoon, roaring. But Guok Pilsung immediately stabbed the monster in the head. Guok Pilsung reassured, don't panic. How can someone who wants to create the strongest guild be afraid of things like this? Go Young-hoon, seeing this, just said, humph. Then, angrily, he shouted, pouring energy into his sword, making it blaze with fire, damn it. Then Go Young-hoon rushed towards the monsters. The monster roared. Guok Pilsung had finished off the monsters at this time. Guok Pilsung asked, is everyone okay? Park Sho-chan replied, it's just a small matter. Go Young-hoon was panting heavily. Guok Pilsung looked at Go Young-hoon and asked, are you very tired? Go Young-hoon replied, I'm okay. Then Guok Pilsung stepped forward and patted his shoulder, don't push yourself too hard. Go Young-hoon thought to himself, in this group, I'm like a spare part. I don't know if I can help them with anything. Guok Pilsung turned back to look at Go Young-hoon, who was quietly walking away. Please take a look at this for me. Guok Pilsung glanced over. Guok Pilsung was surprised by a deep pit in front of him. Guok Pilsung asked, what's this? Park Sho-chan guessed, it must be the trace of the monster from earlier. Guok Pilsung asked further, did it dig a tunnel to escape? Then Guok Pilsung clicked his tongue and said, this is really troublesome. Park Sho-chan asked, what do we do now? Guok Pilsung replied, following the tunnel, we can find its tracks. Park Sho-chan said worriedly, but isn't that too dangerous? What if we suddenly run into it in the tunnel? Guok Pilsung said calmly, but someone needs to do this. Go Young-hoon stepped forward and said, let me go. Guok Pilsung was surprised by those words. Go Young-hoon said sadly, among us, aren't I the weakest? So at least I have to do these small things. Guok Pilsung interrupted that train of thought. That's why I can't let you go even more. Go Young-hoon asked blankly, huh? Guok Pilsung replied, in a dangerous situation, aren't you the most likely to be in danger? Guok Pilsung replied, I'll go. Go Young-hoon froze for a moment. Guok Pilsung turned towards the mouth of the pit and ordered, everyone, search around the entrance to the tunnel. Then Guok Pilsung jumped straight down into the pit without saying a word. Seeing this, Go Young-hoon didn't know what to do and pondered for a long time. Park Sho-chan stepped forward and said, you don't seem to understand very well. Go Young-hoon asked back, am I that untrustworthy? Go Young-hoon affirmed, it's not that, he's always been the one to take on difficult tasks. That's why I respect him and so many people are willing to follow Hunter Guok Pilsung. You'll soon understand what I mean. Get used to it. Then Park Sho-chan turned and left, saying, I'll go scout around now. Go Young-hoon looked at Park Sho-chan pensively without saying anything. A place that can restrain the current association. At a corner of some city, Go Young-hoon quietly scouted around alone. Go Young-hoon was deep in thought. Go Young-hoon remembered the words Guok Pilsung said to him. Go Young-hoon thought, when I heard that sentence, I thought this person would bring great changes in the future, but, am I worthy to accompany them? Suddenly Go Young-hoon noticed something. A hole gradually opened from under the ground. The centipede monster rushed out of the hole. That centipede looked at Go Young-hoon and roared. At this time, Go Young-hoon had escaped and stammered, that's the boss monster. Then Go Young-hoon was about to turn around, I have to quickly inform the others. But his footsteps stopped. Go Young-hoon paused for a moment as if he had made a decision. The monster stood there as if observing its surroundings, roaring. Suddenly, from behind it, the figure of Go Young-hoon appeared holding a flaming knife, rushing towards it. Go Young-hoon slashed at its back, but it had no effect. Go Young-hoon secretly prayed in his heart, damn it. The monster was angry, roaring. Go Young-hoon thought, it blocked the fatal blow? Go Young-hoon jumped backward, landing safely. The angry monster stood in front of Go Young-hoon, roaring loudly. Go Young-hoon retreated in fear. Ugh. Maybe this is just a reckless act, but I want to prove that I am worthy to stand on par with them. With that thought, Go Young-hoon rushed towards the monster, roaring. At this moment, Go Young-hoon was breathing heavily. Ha! The monster continued to roar and attack the man. He immediately dodged aside as the monster's attack landed. Then, immediately after, Go Young-hoon kicked hard into its body and jumped high. He slashed a deep cut into the monster's body. At that moment, the monster cried out in agony. Just as he jumped up, the monster also jerked its head away. Go Young-hoon stood on top of it with burning spirit, preparing to slash down. Then he opened his mouth and roared, "Fire palm!" That area suddenly expanded. Smoke and fire filled the air. Suddenly, something caught his attention. Despite trying his best, Go Young-hoon couldn't send the monster to meet its ancestors. Currently, it was just lying down taking a break and roaring a few times. Immediately after, it stood up completely and faced Go Young-hoon. Go Young-hoon immediately fearfully launched a few slashes at it, but in his heart, he cursed and calculated. The 4 front legs of this monster are really troublesome. It's like it's swinging weapons, blocking all the attacks that Go Young-hoon was trying to launch. This one is probably a sub-dungeon boss at the A rank level, right? Then he remembered Guak Pilsung's appearance and judged in his heart, if it were Hunter Guak Pilsung and Park Shokshun, they could easily take it down alone. Then he lowered his face with a determined look. Let's just try it. He reached out and clenched the sword in his hand. Looking at the fierce monster, Go Young-hoon said to himself, don't doubt yourself, take it down and prove your ability. He glanced at it and continuously roared loudly. Hada! The monster followed suit, roaring even more violently than before. It quickly lashed out with its legs to attack him. But Go Young-hoon quickly evaded its attacks, aiming for the blind spots it couldn't block with its legs. Then his body rushed away quickly to avoid its long, winding legs. He grabbed his weapon and stabbed it hard into its body, shouting, ha! Then another firepalm attack appeared. The monster roared incessantly before that attack. Go Young-hoon's face showed spirit, along with joy, and he praised himself. Very good. Suddenly something was approaching him. A pincer swung across and was about to hit Go Young-hoon, causing him to scream loudly. Immediately after, Go Young-hoon was pushed by the monster's pincer into a wall. Cracks appeared in the place he had just landed. He cursed, damn it, I was careless. The monster still stood there, continuously howling while it still held the upper hand. At this time, Go Young-hoon furrowed his brows and calculated, my body feels like it's about to break apart, so I still can't defeat it. Suddenly he spoke involuntarily. Why did you tell me to take over the Re-Dai Li Guild and not Chaga-on? Guak Pilsung stood in front of him and asked back, what? Not confident? Go Young-hoon lowered his face. Honestly, I'm not sure if the people who used to follow Seo Guangho will listen to me. Seo Guangho is an S-rank hunter, and I'm only a rank. I'll try, but his heart was fluctuating at this time and he couldn't trust himself. Then Go Young-hoon lowered his face and affirmed firmly, I must make them listen to me. Then Guak Pilsung asked, you said your goal is to develop into the strongest guild, right? Haven't you realized it already? It will be difficult to go far if you just gather people in the old way. Go Young-hoon lowered his face and replied, then what should I do? Immediately, Guak Pilsung reached out to him with a punch. Then Guak Pilsung reminded, from now on, develop yourself. Go Young-hoon continued, to become an S-rank hunter, I have to prove my strength is equal to or surpasses them. Currently, there are a total of 20 S-rank hunters in Korea, but even the one at the bottom of the list, like Seo Guangho, possesses strength that an A-rank hunter can't reach. I couldn't overcome the S-rank wall for many years, so I gave up and used the method that was once applied to Hunter Guak Pilsung. Then, involuntarily, Guak Pilsung just calmly asked a question. So what? Go Young-hoon looked blankly and asked back, huh? He glanced over and reminded, you're misunderstanding. S-rank hunter is just an evaluation by others. I told you to develop, not necessarily to become S-rank. Then he began to recall and said, 10 years ago, there was never such an S-rank hunter, but the essence of power has always been the same. If you want to achieve the highest goal, become strong. Don't give up, overcome your fears and continue to train. Then one day you will reach your goal. Guak Pilsung spoke in one breath with a very enthusiastic and confident demeanor. After ending the flashback, returning to reality, the monster was still continuously roaring. Go Young-hoon's heart was now more steadfast. He told himself not to give up. Go Young-hoon's hand gripped his weapon tightly. Then gradually he walked towards the monster. It continued to attack him, but this time he was more determined, urging himself in his heart, come on. The monster immediately rushed towards him quickly. Immediately after, he also kicked his foot hard and rushed towards it. Both began to rush at each other without any hesitation. Go Young-hoon continued to rush quickly towards the monster. Behind him there was a fire burning, causing him to gasp, ha! Then his hand quickly stuck the weapon into the wounded area of the monster. Being physically impacted caused the monster to be in pain and roar. His face also became contorted, continuing to use his initial attack, firepalm. The blade had been deeply embedded inside the monster's body, unable to be pulled out. Then an explosion appeared, pushing Go Young-hoon far away. The smoke dissipated, and the monster's figure gradually disappeared. Go Young-hoon waved his hand a few times to try to chase away the smoke, but the monster still continued to roar incessantly. Its arm had been severed, but it still had the same fierceness as before. A strange black liquid appeared from within the arm. Then it went crazy, continuing to be noisy as before. Go Young-hoon, seeing this, spoke sarcastically. Look at your appearance. Its eyes turned red and became even more angry. Its entire body stood straight up and then began to rush towards him quickly. The monster was extremely angry at losing an arm. its eyes continued to glow red and roar. Meanwhile, Go Young-hoon was breathing heavily. Ha! Ha! The monster still faced him like an abnormal being. Then Go Young-hoon saw it and kept telling himself, I can't dodge, is this the end? At this moment, Guak Pilsung reminded, can I step in now? Immediately after, an attack came from Guak Pilsung. The monster continued to roar when it saw a new prey. Guak Pilsung glanced at Go Young-hoon and asked again, are you okay? He stammered, Hunter Guak Pilsung. He clutched his painful elbow and wondered, why are you here? Guak Pilsung just glanced at him and explained, with a noisy fight like this, who wouldn't notice? Go Young-hoon was a little embarrassed, I'm sorry, I ended up needing Hunter Guak Pilsung's help again. However, contrary to his expression, he only gave a compliment, you did very well. His eyes still looked forward but his mouth kept saying, you didn't give up and faced a difficult enemy, right? Go Young-hoon exhaled a breath and called out, Hunter Guak Pilsung. Hearing this call, he glanced back and guided, don't think rashly, you still have a lot of time ahead of you. While the two were still talking to each other, the monster continued to roar to attract their attention. Then Guak Pilsung gripped the sword in his hand and reassured, don't worry now, just leave this to me. Go Young-hoon placed his trust in him and continued, I'm counting on you. Meanwhile, the monster continued to roar incessantly and rushed quickly towards Guak Pilsung. Another fight began. The monster's face was very unstable. Meanwhile, Guak Pilsung was using all his strength to rush very quickly towards it, the sword always held firmly in his hand. A blade swept across its body, but there was no sign of anything. That blade only made the monster's excitement grow higher. Go Young-hoon, seeing this scene, didn't say anything, only quietly watching his every gesture and action. Then a thought came to his mind. Attacking accurately into the weakest gap of the hard legs, in just a blink of an eye, strength, speed, and accuracy, all were perfect. Is this the skill of a hunter once called a legend? Anger had appeared in the monster's eyes. It continued to roar incessantly. Then its body suddenly fell to the ground. Gradually, its entire body lay flat on the ground and began to crawl away. Go Young-hoon, seeing this, shouted loudly, it's running away. A cheerful look appeared on Guak Pilsung's face, asking, where do you intend to run? The blade was picked up again. Go Young-hoon was very frightened seeing this. A question came to his mind. What the hell is that? At this time, a man walking on the snowy road continuously shouted, Mr. Guak Pilsung, Mr. Guak Pilsung. Meanwhile, Guak Pilsung was supporting Go Young-hoon and called out, over here. Park Shokshin, seeing this, continuously ran over in a hurry and asked, are you all right? Hearing this, he reminded, you're too noisy. Then he ran over and took over the task of supporting Go Young-hoon. Go Young-hoon, seeing this, also gave his thanks. Park Sho-chan began to speak, I heard a very loud noise just now. Did you encounter the boss monster? Guak Pilsung glanced behind him and replied, yes, I did. A look of fear and panic appeared on Park Sho-chan's face at this time. In front of them was the rumored boss monster, and it was currently being frozen solid by Guak Pilsung. Park Sho-chan looked pensively in that direction, and a thought appeared in his mind. That giant monster is completely frozen. What on earth is going on? Guak Pilsung then explained, I just tried a new skill I received recently. Park Shokshin, hearing this, was puzzled. A new skill? When did you get that? He was arrogant. That's right. Any opinions? Then he turned away and reminded, don't nag, let's go back quickly. There are still many monsters to deal with. While supporting Go Young-hoon, Park Shokshin sighed a breath. Ha! Then suddenly Go Young-hoon, walking beside him, spoke up, Hunter Park Shokshin, now I understand a little more why you follow him. Looking at Guak Pilsung's back, Go Young-hoon said, he truly is as steadfast as Mount Tai. I will also become stronger when I follow him. Park Shokshin, supporting Go Young-hoon to walk beside him, also smiled and replied, I look forward to that too. At this time, Guak Pilsung had walked a considerable distance and spoke up, what are you doing? Hurry up and go. Both replied, ah, yes. On the snowy road, Guak Pilsung always called out, why are you kids so slow? By morning at the Hunter Association, a girl with bright red shoes was slowly walking. She walked and gave a confident smile, humming a few lines of a song. Upon reaching the door, she suddenly stopped. Yu Sanyang then waved her hand and said, good morning, good morning. The person inside replied, good morning. Then he asked with concern, Hunter Yu Sanyang, do you have something to be happy about lately? Hearing this, she asked back, oh, am I that noticeable? Then a thought came to her mind. Guak Pilsung has been missing in the dungeon for 2 months, so that makes things even easier for me. Park Shokshin, Go Young-hoon, and others who once trusted him, dared to challenge the association. Now it's too good to be true. This time, I must show them clearly what will happen if they dare to oppose the association. Yu Sanyang still wore a cruel smile. At this time, the man holding the phone suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Oh!" Then he hesitated and ran to call Yu Sanyang. He stammered continuously, "There's this." Hearing this, she wondered and asked, "What's wrong with you?" So flustered. But she was still curious and looked towards the phone. Gradually, darkness enveloped her. Yu Sanyang angrily clenched her teeth so hard that they made a sound. Her hand squeezed so hard that the phone was crushed. The boy, seeing his phone shatter, cried continuously, "My phone!" In Yu Sanyang's heart, she was extremely angry, wondering, what is it? What on earth happened? At this time, at the Russian embassy in South Korea, the room was buzzing with discussion. The Russian ambassador to South Korea, Viktor Pavlovich, stepped onto the podium to speak. Recently, a Russian city fell into great danger due to a monster attack. At that time, some Korean hunters stepped in to help the city and its people. Two people turned to discuss something with each other. Viktor Pavlovich continued, and those heroes are Hunter Park Shokshan of the Chongchan Hunter Guild and Hunter Go Yong-hoon of the Arctic View Hunter Guild. The two stood there, but Go Yong-hoon looked unnatural. Go Yong-hoon looked at Park Shokchan and said, "It seems like we're taking his credit." Park Shokchan replied, "Don't worry, he's not the kind of person to care about things like that." Viktor Pavlovich continued, "We would like to express our gratitude to you, and on this occasion, we will decide to implement a new system. Korean hunters will be granted special operating licenses to operate freely in Russia," and as soon as he finished speaking, the hall erupted in cheers. Park Shokchan looked down at the crowd bustling below. Then Park Shokchan paused and recalled the past. Park Shokchan asked blankly, "They're going back to Korea?" Guak Pilsung replied, "That's right. Garov said he's completed the negotiations with his superiors." Garov laughed and replied, "Haha, you've worked hard. It was easier to convince my superiors thanks to everyone's active work." Park Shokchan said, "May I ask what you negotiated?" Garov replied, "We decided to create a system that allows Korean hunters to operate in Russia." Park Shokchan asked back, "Huh?" Park Shokchan thought, "Aren't they just trying to escape the association's supervision to make money?" Guak Pilsung replied, "It seems like it will be lively when we return to Korea." Park Shokchan smiled at this time. Park Shokchan thought, the reaction is just as he predicted, very lively. A reporter stood up and asked, "You just said Korean hunters. So does that include not only Chongchan and Arctic View, but also other hunter guilds?" Park Shokchan replied, "That's right. In the past, for security reasons, the activities of hunters abroad were greatly restricted unless there was a special case." Viktor Pavlovich said, "But on this occasion, we plan to issue operating licenses to Korean hunters." Someone stood up and asked, "What exactly is that license?" Viktor Pavlovich explained, "To put it simply, it's a type of work visa that allows hunters to operate in Russia. Of course, to maintain domestic security, we will have our own personnel management process." The reporter continued to ask, "But do Korean hunters need to operate abroad? There are plenty of dungeons in the country." Viktor Pavlovich replied, "As far as I know, in Korea, dungeons are managed very strictly thanks to an excellent system. However, because the management is too strict, it is difficult to participate in free exploration, leading to many conflicts. But we in Russia, with our vast territory, lack manpower while there are many dungeons. Therefore, we want to cooperate with talented and trustworthy Korean hunters. In return, we will purchase items from the dungeons at a very low fee, and the hunters can earn a lot of money with this fee, so it's a win-win situation for both sides." A female reporter spoke up, "But has this been discussed with the Korean Hunter Association?" Viktor Pavlovich laughed and replied, "Not yet. I understand that the Korean Hunter Association is not an official government agency, and we don't think it's necessary to ask permission from such a private organization." That statement shocked the hall. The whole room was silent. Go Young-hoon said, "If those in the association know about this, they'll definitely be furious." Park Shokchan smiled and thought, "People who are dissatisfied with the association's autocracy will definitely come to Russia to operate. The association's influence in the country will decrease greatly after this, turning a chance trip to Russia into a big opportunity. He's really skilled." Go Young-hoon asked, "But where is he?" Park Shokchan replied, "I don't know. He said he had a place to go." Suddenly, the sound of Seo Guangho's cursing was heard outside. "Those damn bastards. They're forcing S-rank hunters who are hospitalized with injuries to argue about their S-rank hunter qualifications." Seo Guangho continued to curse. "They must know that I'm the only S-rank hunter at Asale. So why are they writing this article? They must be anonymous." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. Seo Guangho was even angrier and shouted, "Get lost. Didn't you hear me say I'm not receiving guests? Get out." But the door continued to gradually open. Seo Guangho angrily shouted, "I told you to get lost already, damn it." Suddenly, a look of fear appeared on his face. "Huh? Then Guok Pilsung walked in and asked, "What's this? Are you talking to me?" Ao Guang Ho began to panic and blurted out, "No, no, I mistook you for someone else." Then he gave a forced and polite smile. "Why are you here today?" Guok Pilsung calmly replied, "I heard you were hospitalized, so I came to visit right away. You should be grateful to see me." At this time, Seo Guanggo still tried to put on a grateful face and replied, "Ah, yes." Guok Pilsung walked to the table, took a piece of fruit, and began to peel it. While peeling, he offered it to Seo Guangzhou and said, "How are you feeling?" Ao Guangho replied, "How else could I be? I suddenly fell into the middle of some beginner's dungeon, and I writhed so much that I ended up like this." Guok Pilsung continued to ask, "Is there anything else?" He shyly put his hand on his head and replied, "Actually, when moving through the different dungeons, I received something called a blessing." Guok Pilsung was interested and asked, "What blessing?" Ao Guangho explained, "I must help the blessing of non-disaster. Since receiving it, my body has not been injured anymore." Guok Pilsung looked at him and said, "A body that is not injured? Then why are you still hospitalized?" He explained, "That's because I wandered in the dungeon for several days without eating or drinking properly." Guok Pilsung continuously scolded, "What a fool." Then he crossed his arms and said, "Have you told anyone what happened in the dungeon?" Ao Guangho replied, "Who do I have to tell?" Guok Pilsung asked in great confusion, "Don't you have friends?" Receiving that question, Seo Guangho replied, "Well, I don't have any friends. But how about you? Were you also dragged into another dungeon?" Guok Pilsung helplessly said, "I was taken to Russia." He asked in surprise, "Russia?" Then Guok Pilsung recalled each of his moments. "Yes, that's right. When I woke up, I found myself in some god dungeon. I'm glad you returned safely." Guok Pilsung was asked back, "Yes, it doesn't seem like you're very happy that I'm back." Ao Guangho replied, "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside. Ao Guangho quickly ran to it and asked, "Who is it? Are there guests coming?" As soon as Seo Guangho opened the door, he was stunned. "I don't know who, but come in." His expression was extremely shocked. "I didn't expect to be welcomed here." Guok Pilsung was very surprised, and Seo Guangho asked in a panic, "Who is this?" The person in front gave a faint smile and replied, "A hunter from the Hunter Association." Ao Guangho suddenly became silent, looking extremely worried. Standing in the hospital room were two other people, Guok Pilsung and another man. The man, seeing him, greeted him. "It's been a while." Guok Pilsung also replied, "Yes, it's been a while." He looked at Seo Guangzhou and said, "Hunter Seo Guangzhou, can you leave us for a bit so I can talk?" He hesitated and said, This is my hospital room." The man looked at Guok Pilsung pleadingly. "Hey, help me out a bit, will you?" He reluctantly scratched his head and said, "Ah, yes, of course." Outside, Seo Guangho was extremely angry and scolded. "They should know clearly who's in the hospital." The man inside the hospital room began to reminisce. "It's been 10 years. How have you been living during that time?" Guok Pilsung calmly replied, "I've been living quietly in a house in the mountains with fresh air. If you like, I can introduce you to it." The man continued to ask why Guok Pilsung suddenly disappeared 10 years ago, asking if it was because of that incident. However, Guok Pilsung remained silent and didn't answer this question. Guok Pilsung continued, "If I had stayed there, similar things would have continued to happen." The man argued, "You were the one who laid the foundation for this hunter association, but you left without a word. So we, the people who stayed, went through a very chaotic time. After you left, the association also lost its center and encountered many problems. That's why I, who replaced you as the chairman, had to endure a lot of hardship." After the man's complaints, Guok Pilsung gritted his teeth and continued, "Yes, that's right, I know I've caused you a lot of trouble." But he only reaffirmed, "No, you don't know anything. What's the reason you're trying to shake up the Hunter Association now? If you're not satisfied with the current association, why didn't you become the chairman yourself back then?" Guok Pilsung calmly replied, "I'm not the right person for that role." But the man still tried to argue. "At least everyone would be more satisfied if I became the chairman. If it were you, no one would be dissatisfied." Guok Pilsung replied, "No dissatisfaction doesn't mean it's the best choice." The man's eyes suddenly glanced up and assessed Guok Pilsung. "You're still the same, always thinking your way is the best. So you're not happy with the current hunters, so you suddenly appear to overthrow everything?" Guok Pilsung affirmed, "If there's a mistake, it must be corrected." Immediately after that sentence, a few white pupils appeared in the man's mind. But he still continued, "Not everything has to be the way you want it to be, but you can't say it's entirely our fault either." In his heart, Guok Pilsung thought, "Could it be because of you?" But he still spoke, "Do you also think that the association is not at fault?" The man immediately stiffened and stammered, I must, no matter what, I'm still the chairman of the Hunter Association." Guok Pilsung sighed and replied, I see. The position of chairman has turned you into this. The man immediately became angry and turned away, continuously complaining, don't say it so easily, you've been absent for the past 10 years. If you don't know how much responsibility the association has been carrying on its shoulders. Looking at you now, I must admit, as you said, you're not the right person to be the chairman. Then he felt fortunate that he was the one who became the chairman and not him. But after a few steps away, he turned his face back and said, so if you plan to continue causing chaos in the association as the chairman, I won't let you rest. This is my last warning to you as a former colleague who respected you. After the man left, Seo Guangho felt relieved and entered the room. He's finally gone. But he continued, I didn't expect the chairman to suddenly barge in like this. What did he come to say? Guok Pilsung turned his face to the sky and replied, he told me to be more careful. Seo Guangho was delighted. So will the association and you reconcile then? But Guok Pilsung turned his face away and replied, no, I have to teach them a lesson until they wake up. So Seo Guangho showed the same sullen face as before. Then Guok Pilsung continued, so I need you to come with me on a trip. Seo Guangho felt an ominous premonition about that trip. At the White Hunter Association, Seo Guangho walked forward with his face completely covered in white. Then he walked like a thief and wondered, why did I come here in the first place? Isn't this the enemy's headquarters? Guok Pilsung calmly walked. To create a new guild, we also need to register members with the association, so we came here. Seo Guangho was very puzzled and asked, what? Who's planning to create a new guild? He affirmed firmly, I am. Seo Guangho was very surprised. Huh? Why are you doing this? But Guok Pilsung turned back and urged, hurry up. Seo Guangho tried to explain for 10 years, we still have the Chongchan Guild and the Arctic View Guild, so why do we need to submit a new guild? Guok Pilsung glanced back and sighed, if I'm there, that association will only keep nagging Park Shokshan and Go Young-hoon. So I think it's better to create a new guild myself to operate comfortably. At this time, Seo Guangzhou didn't understand why he was being dragged along. I see. Guok Pilsung also spoke, you have to join too. So at this time, Seo Guangho was very shocked. Huh? Me? Why? Guok Pilsung sighed, I've never managed a guild, so I need an S-rank hunter with experience in running large guilds. Guok Pilsung continued, being dragged into this, I probably don't have the right to refuse, right? Guok Pilsung said, you just try. Then Guok Pilsung walked and said, well then, let's go register the guild now. Behind him was Seo Guangho's sullen face. At this time, the secretary was smiling with a helpless look. I'm sorry, but to establish a guild, you need at least 3 members. Guok Pilsung was very shocked. Huh? Seo Guangho in the back also considered, how can you not find out such a basic thing before coming? Guok Pilsung angrily vented on him and said, if you knew, you should have said it earlier. He could only hold his head and explain, I only found out today that I was going to join a guild after being dragged in here. Guok Pilsung put his hand to his chin to think, what should I do now? Where can I find another person? Why does everything hurt my head? Then Seo Guangho suggested, why don't we force someone on the street to join? So another punch came, and Guok Pilsung asked, what are you thinking? Do you want another one? So he recklessly replied, like I need that guild so much. In the back, other footsteps appeared and continuously shouted, damn it, daring to kick me out of the guild this morning. While walking, he thought, I'm not grateful for the work I've done building the guild until now, they're really useless, it's all that guy's fault. If I hadn't failed that hunter promotion last time, well, if I meet that guy now, I'll beat him to death out of anger. Guok Pilsung stood behind and said, hey, you over there. That call made Park Sang-hyuk stop. It's been a while. Suddenly, Park Sang-hyuk became even more angry and shouted, why are you calling me for no reason? What do you want to kill me for? He asked, are you looking for a guild? Why are you asking like that? Guok Pilsung continued to propose, join our guild. Hearing these words, Park Sang-hyuk suddenly became silent, avoiding him, and a hint of anxiety was hidden in his body. What? Guok Pilsung and Park Sang-hyuk were standing face to face. Then Park Sang-hyuk frowned and spoke up, you're asking me to join your guild? Guok Pilsung replied nonchalantly, yes, that's right. It seems like someone was just kicked out of their guild. He angrily shouted, who? Who was kicked out? I disliked that guild, so I left, okay? Guok Pilsung just sighed in disappointment and shook his head. But he also didn't care. What kind of guild is it? Is it one of the top 10 guilds? Then a sullen look appeared on his face. A new type of trash? He reached out and scratched his head. I must be crazy. What am I thinking? If it's one of the top 10 guilds, I'd still have to consider it. Why would I join a guild like that? Another person said sarcastically, don't waste your time with him. Let's go find another place. That person's footsteps were preparing to leave. Then suddenly, The reluctant person spoke up. Wait, I've changed my mind. I will join your guild. Guok Pilsung was delighted to hear this. Oh, why? But he made a condition. But first, I want to check if you guys are worthy for me to join. Guok Pilsung replied, your skills, I know well, but not the other guys. Hearing this, Seo Guangho pointed to himself and asked back, me? Then he glanced sideways at Park Sang-hyuk. Park Sang-hyuk also gave a playful smile looking at him. At this time, in the training ground, two people were standing facing each other. Seo Guangho spoke up and asked, I really have to fight a B-rank guy? After all, I'm an S-rank hunter. Isn't it too much to duel with a B-rank guy? Park Sang-hyuk silently looked at the two people who were negotiating, feeling a little uncomfortable. In his heart, he had a thought, I already knew his situation from last time, but if I can take down this subordinate, then the plan to establish a guild. Suddenly Seo Guangho looked over there and shouted, what's with that ugly smile? The other person glanced at Seo Guangho and reminded, don't be too rough, understand? Both began to draw their weapons. Then they exchanged glances that were difficult to describe. Then he began to speak. Okay, no need for weapons. Let's start empty-handed. Let's see who's the loser. So Park Sang-hyuk quickly rushed towards him. Don't blame me if you lose. A blade quickly charged at Seo Guangho, who was standing there. From that place appeared a large shield surrounding Seo Guangho. Then, feeling the pressure, he struggled to hold his weapon in his hand and cried out, ugh. In his heart, he cursed, what the hell is this? He can't be stopped. Seo Guangho only turned his back and remained silent. He raised his hand and pondered, did that damn old man say he was B-rank? At this time, Guok Pilsung was still calm. He watched the fight. Behind the stands, voices of discussion rang out, is that the unlucky B-rank guy from long ago? I heard he was blacklisted by the board, so he could never pass the promotion test. How pathetic. But who is the guy fighting with him? He easily blocked his spear. He must be strong. Park Sang-hyuk was already sweating heavily, and he cried out a few times. Then he shouted, no way. In his heart, he suddenly thought, being defeated without a promotion test like that, it won't be like the first time again. Park Sang-hyuk continued to firmly grip his weapon and rushed towards Seo Guangho. At this time, he widened his eyes and stood still, doing nothing. From that place, a shock appeared. Then he rushed in and shouted, over here. Just like that, the blade quickly charged at Seo Guangho. The blade rushed towards something in the way. Immediately after, the sword shattered as soon as it hit Seo Guangho's body, causing him to glance over and give praise, not bad. Then Seo Guangho was surrounded by a special aura. In his heart, Park Sang-hyuk suddenly thought, my spear was destroyed? Gradually Seo Guangho came closer to Park Sang-hyuk and asked, anything else? He began to comment, your strength and speed are really at the level of a normal E-rank hunter, this guy is. Then Seo Guangho began to speak arrogantly, you said you wanted to confirm my strength, right? Then let's verify it. In the training room, the two were practicing together. Both were extremely angry, grinding their teeth. Above, in the stands, people were constantly discussing, isn't that Seo Guangho? That S-rank hunter? Seo Guangzhou? Is the person fighting Park Sang-hyuk Seo Guangho? Suddenly, Seo Guangho spoke up. Hey, he gave a smile and scratched his head. It's my turn now, right? He suddenly crouched down to the ground. Immediately after, he threw a punch at Park Sang-hyuk. Determination appeared in his eyes as he reminded, don't disappoint me. Park Sang-hyuk stared at this and thought, humph, if I can't avoid this, I'm done for. Immediately after, a shout rang out, stop. Seo Guangho froze upon hearing it. Huh? Guok Pilsung suddenly appeared from somewhere and kicked him far away. Seo Guangho immediately lay flat on the ground and cried out, ugh. He couldn't stand up, he just lay still, continuously complaining, ah. Guok Pilsung continued to run quickly towards him coldly, preparing to kick his face, ah. He kicked hard on Seo Guangho's face and said, I told you it was just a practice fight, were you planning to kill him? I told you to do it moderately. Seo Guangho refused to calm down and angrily argued, who told that guy to make me so angry? Park Sang-hyuk also refused to give in, adding, because of you, I'm also annoyed. Let's see if you can take a beating. He reluctantly admitted his mistake. I'm sorry. At the same time, a question rang out in Park Sang-hyuk's mind, what on earth is going on? Along with that was the vision of Park Sang-hyuk being trampled and scolded by Guok Pilsung. Are you not going to cry until you see the coffin? Saying sorry now. Park Sang-hyuk could only lower his face, recalling each moment and thinking, he threw Seo Guangho with one hand and also stepped on him? If that guy hadn't intervened, I would have. At the same time, Guok Pilsung walked over and asked, are you okay? He just froze and stammered, ah, yes. In the stands, the discussions continued. Is it over? How can Park Sang-hyuk win against the S-rank hunter? Seo Guangzhou. Then everyone focused on Guok Pilsung and wondered, but who is the hunter who threw Seo Guangzhou? Guok Pilsung stood arrogantly and asked, so, is the test enough? Park Sang-yuk stared at him and asked, are you really a B-rank hunter? He calmly replied, you saw it during the promotion test. What more do you want? Didn't you directly test me just now? With a somewhat unwilling expression, he asked in a low voice, so Hunter Seo Guangzhou is the chairman of the guild I'm going to join? Guok Pilsung affirmed firmly, I am the chairman. Then Guok Pilsung lowered his face to look at Seo Guangzhou and said, as for this guy, he's just the manager, right? The statement made Park Sang-yuk a little confused. Manager? He put his hands on his hips and asked loudly, what? Are you not satisfied that I'm the chairman? Park Sang-yuk tried to suppress his emotions and said, no. But in his heart, he was still thinking a few things. He just blocked Seo Guangzhou's attack. It's definitely not just luck. Curiosity stirred in his heart, and a question appeared. Who is this guy? Guok Pilsung shouted, hey, are you going to join the guild or not? He suppressed all his anger and replied with a gruff voice, I'll join. A compliment rang out for him. Good, leave all those unhappy feelings behind, let's get along from now on. With sweat all over his face, he replied, I understand. As he walked past Seo Guangzhou, he urged, follow me, we have to register the guild first. Suddenly Park Sang-yuk shouted loudly, hey! Just as Guok Pilsung turned around, he suddenly asked, have you named the guild yet? Guok Pilsung was a little surprised by this question and asked back, name? At this time, inside the Changchan guild office, Park Shokchan was sitting attentively, reading each page of the documents. He threw the document down. Immediately after, he began to complain with a tired expression. I'm so tired, because of the agreement with Russia, the work just keeps piling up. Suddenly Park Shokshin raised his head and remembered, I haven't seen any news from him lately. It's been a few days, right? Surely nothing happened, right? Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and he ordered, come in. Taijin rushed in and reported, Chairman. Park Shokshin, seeing that flustered look, still asked calmly, Hunter Kim Taijin, what's the matter? He hesitated and said, have you seen the news? Hearing this question, he suddenly asked back, what news? At this time, a large number of reporters appeared outside the space gate. A boy came up and asked, why are so many people gathered in front of the gate? Another person began to gossip. You don't know what's going on? It's said that Seo Guangzhou will participate in this dungeon raid. He formed a new guild and is participating. So many reporters came. Seo Guangzhou, that crazy S-rank hunter? As Seo Guangzhou's back was turned, the discussions continued. Didn't he disband his guild not long ago, saying he would live quietly? So why did he create a new guild then? Suddenly everyone gathered and exclaimed, oh! As soon as Seo Guangzhou's figure appeared, everyone was very surprised. It's Seo Guangzhou. Hunter Seo Guangzhou, please spare some time for an interview. He coldly asked, what's the matter? Immediately after, a barrage of questions appeared. Did you form a new guild? After the disturbance at the TV station, the Grizzly Guild was also disbanded. So why did you form a new guild? He calmly explained, it seems like you guys have misunderstood something. The disbandment of the Grizzly Guild has absolutely nothing to do with the incident at the TV station. And this guild was not formed by me, I am just a manager, supporting the new chairman to run it. Everyone became noisy again. Seo Guangzhou didn't form the guild? Then who is the chairman? Is it an S-rank hunter? Immediately after, he began to point to Guok Pilsung to get him to resolve the situation. If you want to know more, ask our team leader over there. He also did not hesitate and enthusiastically introduced, hello everyone, I am Guok Pilsung, the chairman of the newly established unique guild this time. Guok Pilsung, the name sounds familiar. Ah, that's right, the famous hunter from 10 years ago. But that Guok Pilsung is over 80 years old, and this person looks only in his early 20s. A reporter nearby suddenly shouted loudly, ah, I remember. This is the B-rank hunter who caused a storm by jumping 2 ranks not long ago. His name is also Guok Pilsung. The chairman is a B-rank hunter? Why would an S-rank hunter like Seo Guangzhou join such a guild? Suddenly an uneasy idea appeared. Could it be that he's just a puppet chairman? Seo Guangzhou's reputation isn't good anyway. Another person suggested, Hunter Guok Pilsung, may I ask a question? Guok Pilsung calmly allowed it, go ahead. The person began to offend, did you really establish this guild, or are you just taking the title of chairman on behalf of Hunter Seo Guangzhou, who has long had a lot of scandals? Seo Guangzhou, hearing these words, also went crazy and shouted, what? Guok Pilsung affirmed firmly, unique guild was created by me myself, this guy is really just helping me. Another person pried, if so, what is your reason for establishing the guild? He calmly repeated the question, the reason, huh? Then he continued to explain, Because the Hunter Association is too terrible. Everyone couldn't believe their ears. What? He asked back. Didn't you hear clearly? I said because the Hunter Association is too terrible. Guok Pil Sung then spoke arrogantly. Hereby, I declare. Our unique guild will be the place to overthrow the Hunter Association.